Okay. All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the regular council session, Howell Township Mayor and Council, February 6, 2007. It's approximately 6:40. Would you please read the opening statement, Ms. Woolman?
Yes. Let the minutes reflect that adequate notice of the holding of this workshop meeting of the Howell Township Council was provided for in the following manner: by the posting of a copy of said notice upon the bulletin board in the Township Municipal Building on January 1, 2007. By the faxing of a copy of said notice to the Asbury Park Press, Tri-Town News, and Star Ledger for publication on January 1, 2007. By the filing of a copy of said form of notice in the Township Clerk's office on January 1, 2007. The public will be allowed to attend and will be allowed to participate pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Law. The public is reminded that civility and decorum will be maintained during the meeting. Any contracts awarded at this meeting or between now and the next meeting will be required to comply with the requirements of Public Law 1975, Chapter 127. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code, be advised that this facility is designed with 3 emergency exits for your safety. The locations are as follows. Upon exiting the meeting room to the rear, they are to your immediate left and immediate right, and at the front of the meeting room to the left of the dais. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77. Roll call. Mrs. Dalton? Here. Mr. Howell?
Here.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Mrs. Showmaker actually apparently called the manager, and she's home with this virus that apparently is going around, so she's not going to be here, Mr. Chernetsky, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mayor DeBella?
Here. All right, we have reason to go into closed session?
Yes, Mayor, personnel, litigation, and contracts.
Okay. Would you please read the appropriate statement?
Whereas Title 10, Chapter 4, Section 13 of the New Jersey Revised Statutes require that the public shall not be excluded from any meetings of a public body unless a resolution authorizing such exclusion is adopted at a public meeting. Whereas the Township Council of the Township of Howell has determined that such a closed meeting is required to discuss certain matters which are exempted from consideration with the public in attendance under New Jersey Revised Statutes 10:4-12, namely personnel, litigation, and contracts. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Council of the Township of Howell that the public shall be excluded from the next portion of this meeting, and that the Township Council will reconvene in public session thereafter. Be it further resolved that minutes will be kept of the meeting in closed session, and the time and the circumstances under which the discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public cannot be determined at this time.
Okay, we need a motion and a second, please.
Mayor, I'll make a motion we go into executive.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any remarks? Okay, hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. Okay, we'll convene. We're finished with executive. Approximately 7:30.
Okay, Mayor.
We're ready? Okay, I'm going to reconvene the meeting back to order. I'd ask that everyone please rise for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd ask that we all just please remain standing. A moment of silent observation in thought of the many troops all over the world defending this country. Thank you. Okay, just for the benefit of the public, council was in executive session. We're going to move right to reports of township officials. Mr. Chernetsky, we'll start with you, sir. What do you have for us?
Okay, Mayor. First off, just agenda items. We have a great deal of township business coming before us. And on your add-on agenda, and for the benefit of the public, we are asking council to introduce ordinances 9A1 through 9A5. The purpose of this is we need to the list of ordinances to introduce, we have to add 2 settlement ordinances dealing with the land use. and they're reflected on your add-on agenda. That means we have the possibility of having 10 public hearings on one day next month. So what we would ask council to consider is, we took all the ones that were considered basically house cleaning business and asked council to introduce those ordinances this evening, and we would have the public hearing on these ordinances at the workshop next month. But these are neither of these are the land use ordinances. And so that's the one thing we would ask council to entertain doing this evening. So if you have any questions about these as we get to introduction, they might warrant some additional conversation. The only other thing I wanted to bring to council's attention, and really the focus of my comment tonight, was the Howell Township Neighborhood Traffic Management Policy that we have before you. This is essentially can be viewed basically as a management tool for handling the large volume of inquiries we have about calming traffic in neighborhoods. I did a presentation about 2 months ago. I received feedback from council members. We made a number of adjustments to the policy, and this is one of those things that it's not an ordinance in a sense that it's carved in stone. It's a very comprehensive document, but it can always probably stand to be fine-tuned as we go down the road. But at this point, it provides staff with a guide on how to evaluate items that come before the council. Actually, the hope is that they don't come before the council for resolution, but they come to council to fix the policy where the policy might fall short, and that you look to staff to address the individual concerns of the residents in the neighborhoods. And this lays out a comprehensive guide. We looked at best practices in a number of the other communities our size, frankly, many of them outside our state, and would ask council to endorse this policy.
Mr. Chernetsky, on this, do you want to set up a night on one of the workshop meetings to give everyone a chance to review this final draft, and then we can come back at the next workshop, perhaps the March workshop?
If that's the pleasure of the council, but I think, frankly, this is one of those things where we can keep looking at it, we can keep amending it. So I did receive some preliminary feedback, which I incorporated into this.
Well, then, what's the pleasure of the council? I mean, it's a work in progress. Do we want to move on accepting this report pursuant to its constant revision and modification?
I would like to ask, who participated with you in doing the traffic management policy?
Well, you'll note in your packet that there is a letter from Sergeant Markulik, and the traffic safety unit endorses this. But I worked with the police department basically in crafting something that they could, that they or the engineering department would be able to implement.
Okay. Mr. Nunziata, was it on it also? Were you, sir?
Yes, I was.
To what extent, Mr. Nunziata?
I took the report that Mr. Chernetsky had prepared, and I drafted or redlined about 30 or 40 questions, issues, comments.
Okay.
And I know we all had individual comments. I know I sent Mr. Chernetsky a memo with some of my handwritten comments on it. I suspect other people did as well.
I would also note that a member of the public, I'm not sure if it was necessarily in response to the presentation, but to the idea that we're having adopting a policy, came forward with something that's now been incorporated into the what we'd call the Phase 1 options. That's called the Keep Kids Alive Drive 25 campaign, which is now part of this. One of the options that the officers will look at when they receive neighborhood complaints.
So what is the pleasure of the council? We want to accept this tonight? You want to look at it further?
Well, we can always address it at a later date. We can accept it tonight and come back with comments, and this will probably be a work in progress over the years, depending on how the road.
And just so it's clear, Mr. Chernetsky, you gave a presentation on this 2 months ago, and this is about the third or fourth revision that the council has seen.
Correct.
Starting before I was on council, I believe.
Yes, ma'am.
So why don't we just, I'll ask someone to make a motion in a second, and we'll officially accept this report.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any final comments? The only thing I would ask, Mr. Chernetsky, can we publish this report on the website?
Immediately, yes.
Terrific. Okay. Any other comments? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. What else, Mr. Chernetsky?
The only last item is to let the council know and the public that on the 16th of this month, we anticipate launching the online RTC program. Essentially, residents will be given an opportunity to go online, and if they don't have access to a computer, they can call in, and that information will continue to be logged, except the program will be now the online program. And residents will have a drop-down menu of streets that they live on to identify problems. There'll be a drop-down menu of common problems and complaints. This program was initially purchased by Mr. Davis, and I'd like to acknowledge his shopping around for it. And it gives us a great management tool because now, instead of us receiving individual emails, that information can be captured in a central place. And that will help guide many decisions that we make. It'll be a reference point for budget discussions, capital improvement proposals. We can take the addresses off the database and we can plug them into a GIS program and sort of give a sense on the map where the areas of concern in a community are concerning the 30 or so various issues that we've listed that have a direct link to the department head. And we'll be able to monitor it at the manager's office, seeing what's coming into various departments, what the backlog is, and what the issues are. We don't always capture the emails in a central information place, so I would ask first of all, the public to try to utilize it as much as possible, and when you get calls and emails, I would ask you to please direct the residents to log the information on this online RTC program, because it is a good investment. We are spending some money on it, and we want to maximize the value that it'll give us.
Would someone just mind closing the doors in the back, if you don't mind? Thank you.
And I will give a presentation, a visual one, PowerPoint, on the 20th, showing how the program works.
Okay.
That's it for me.
Anything else? Mr. Bongiovanni, anything for public?
It's not honored.
There's an upcoming environmental committee meeting, I believe on February 9th, commission meeting, which will be discussing amendments to proposed ordinance, which we worked on in a little workshop recently, and I hope the commission will meet and report back to us as soon as possible.
Great. I understand we have a new Assistant Township CFO,
Yes.
Louis Palazzo, so welcome, Mr. Palazzo. Anything, Mr. Nunziato, reports?
No, sir.
Okay.
Mayor, two more items. One is I just wanted to inform the council and the public that our township clerk is recuperating. He had a successful hip replacement operation, and he's doing fine.
Great.
And says hello. And I noticed Mr. Laurie in the audience, and I did have one to-do item to follow up on. I wanted to point out. The question is why do we need to bundle our newspapers and cardboard where everything goes in the same truck? And the answer to that is that it was written into the contract, and that's what the company bid on, that residents would do that. And what we don't see is when they get to the plant is that you have one individual who kind of yanks the bundles out, and they have another machine that kind of source separates anything that might be loose that fell apart. But it is part of their economics to have those items bundled when they arrive at the yard.
Okay, great. And I know Chernetsky is difficult. It's Laraya, nice Italian name.
I'm sorry.
He's I'm only kidding, Mr. Chernetsky.
Mr. L.
I do all this stuff, so I'm going to go right to reports. All right, Ms. Dalton, we're going to do reports. We'll start with you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to just acknowledge that I observed an article, or not an article, a photograph in the newspaper of our Public Works Department. Was praised and recognized for having some innovative skills and actually saving the township some money by building a machine to combine the chemicals used for the salting for the snow and ice removal on the roads. And they built a piece of equipment. They went to a class and were able to build the equipment for $1,000 when the new equipment would have cost over $7,000 retail. And I just wanted to make sure that they got the proper recognition. It's nice to see all the people that work down there. When I was newly elected, I had the privilege of going down there and meeting everyone and getting a nice tour of Public Works and what it does, Mr. Howell and Mr. Walsh as well. It is an amazing operation down there, and I just wanted to recognize them for that. Mr. Chernetsky, I have been doing some discussing with you and some reading different opportunities for Howell Township to get involved in the Healthy Communities movement, which is essentially looking at health and wellness issues for the benefit of the town to help the citizens fight issues of childhood obesity and adult obesity. And I have been talking about the Mayor's Wellness Campaign, sponsored by Aetna and the New Jersey League of Municipalities. I understand that we have a new park, well, we are advertising for a new Parks and Recs director.
Correct.
And as many people may not know, health and fitness issues do impact on a community's ability to bring in businesses, to attract residents, et cetera. I also read in our packet just today, quite coincidentally, the packet of information we received this evening, that the Recreation Master Plan hasn't been done in 11 years, has not been redone, and the Recreation Advisory Board wants to be actively involved in that. And I think this would be a good time for the township to look at those issues and try to broaden so that we have the opportunity to get grant money to do some recreational activities that will help the town. I know that we have Howell Day coming up this year. It's September 15th. It's a lot earlier than it was in 2006. Is that right?
I just got to whisper that it might change.
Actually, the date, I believe, needed to be changed. The acting recreation director will get back to you with another date. That happens to be the date that all the fire personnel are in Wildwood for their convention, and we need them here for emergency situations. So I believe they're going to look to the 22nd, but he will confirm that with you.
In any event, regardless of the day, I think that what I would like, if it's council's pleasure too, I would like us to see us have more of a health component to Howell Day. And I don't know if we can, from a technical legal point of view or not, but if we could incorporate perhaps a 5-mile walk around the reservoir as part of that. I would really like to see us, by way of example, try to do something for the youth and for the community in general as far as more walking, more active recreation and things like that.
I think those are fine suggestions. We'll look to incorporate them, and we will get back to you. And you hit on the notion of long-term planning, including that as part of our master plan. And quite frankly, all the elements of the master plan can become integrated. So wellness can certainly become an issue that becomes part of our vision and part of our identity. I think that's an area we can definitely pursue.
And that's all I have.
Mayor's coming back.
I just have a couple things. Mr. Nunziato, I know that last year, after New Jersey American repaved Newton's Corner Road, when they put the new line in, you had some difficulty arranging a schedule with them to fill in the cracks that were there. Well, now the other areas where they did fill in, now there's new areas where the pavement is cracking from one end to the other again. I don't know. What do we do? Just keep filling in cracks, or at some point in time do we say, hey, look, you didn't let the dirt settle enough before you paved it, or I don't know now.
Right. Well, there is an open dialogue as far as the maintenance of that project. So we will continue to monitor it, and if in fact we feel that the crack sealing is not an effective way to address it, we will go to a more severe or fix.
Right, because where they did seal it, it's fine, it's the other sides of where the pipe were put in now.
Well, there was actually, there was actually 50 to 60% of what we had requested was actually done. They do actually have more to go.
Okay. The next thing I wanted to talk about was the fact that we did, in fact, close down one side of Red Bud Lane now. That's the road which was the entrance and exit for the Hidden View or Pine View. It changes names, I don't recall. So that's now an entrance that, the way that the manager has it configured is there's no more construction vehicle traffic using the back roads, Poplar, Pine Needles, Cherry Lane. All of that traffic is supposed to now be handled solely on Memorial Drive. One of the things that we did see, though, is that people are now using the one-way the wrong way. So now, do we need to adopt an ordinance that sets Red Bud as a one-way street? So if police officers see that, people are coming down that road the wrong way, they can, in fact, issue them a summons, because if it's not listed on our streets as a one-way street.
All right. Well, it is against the law to drive on the opposite side of the road. So there is already that provision in place, and the police have been directed to, one, redirect truck traffic out of that neighborhood. So it'll take a while,
Right.
by the way, for to make sure everyone gets assimilated to the new arrangement. And they are also advising residents not to drive on the wrong side of the road. Now, eventually, the idea here is that because the sales office and the models are right there at that entrance, to allow, on a temporary basis, the sales traffic to come in, but then to exit out Memorial.
Right.
And the plan is that we would close that off. So it's council's pleasure whether you want an ordinance to give the police greater enforcement power, but realize ultimately that road is going to be closed off.
Okay. I have another question. That development was originally a Wall Township development.
That's correct.
Now, is that area, are those homes going to be serviced by Cablevision, which is the Howell subscriber, or is Comcast the cable provider in Wall? I'm not really sure. My concern is that once people move in there, they may not be able to watch these meetings if they have a different provider.
We will definitely look into that.
Okay.
Plus we get the revenue, so the franchise revenue.
All right. Another issue I've been hearing quite a bit about is people are receiving summonses for having basketball nets in the street. My answer to the residents has been, there's been an ordinance on the books for a number of years now requiring that they be removed by November 15th. Originally, I believe what happened was code enforcement went and they actually attached a flyer to it or some kind of paperwork to it that said you have so many days to remove it. And if it wasn't removed, then they received a summons. So that pretty accurate. It wasn't that, on Monday somebody went out and just put a summons in there. They were first given a warning.
That is my understanding, yes.
Okay. And Councilwoman Dalton had mentioned Howell Day and wanting to turn it into a wellness thing with this 5-mile walk around the reservoir. I would respectfully request that if the council is supposed to do that walk, that we make sure that's not a day when the ambulance corps are out of town. One of the things, and we had discussed it earlier, at an earlier date, was I'd like to see our township possibly follow the lead of like Jackson and Colts Neck as far as when they have their day, their Colts Neck Day, Jackson Day. That political booths are really not allowed there, and that's how it goes in those towns. If you're running for an office and you wish to come and shake hands, that's fine. But it takes a lot of pressure, I would believe, off the recreation department of who to set up where. Other towns seem to deal with that pretty well. Is that something that we could look into possibly?
Mike, move a little closer. Would you like to repeat that just for the home audience so they can hear? The councilman asked whether or not the township can restrict political booths assigned to political parties at Howell Day. Frankly, that is a legal question. I can tell you from a practical point of view, it's a tradition in a number of communities that you either do or you don't.
Right.
But I also know that these matters have been challenged. So I would defer to the township attorney to perhaps give council an opinion on this after some, researching it a little bit.
Okay.
I think just the parameters, the usual discussion involves whether this is a usual place of public debate or public or political gatherings. If it was perceived by the courts as being a traditional avenue for these kind of gatherings, it might be difficult to have an absolute prohibition against it. But that's just a general ballpark view of it.
Okay.
Could we, I think Mr. Howell's point is an excellent one. Could we take the position that we're adopting a policy that says that exhibitors who are from a political group or a candidate, when they send in their material, we have a policy statement that we write back, and when candidate so-and-so challenges it, we'll deal with it then. We'll attempt to have the manager explain that this is more of a family event, and we're trying to keep partisan politics out of it. Maybe we do it and we wait to get challenged. I mean,
That
it's
is
really council's call, but
that most definitely.
It's like putting up, making the decision to put up a religious symbol without really being certain what would happen, to see if anybody would complain. So, in that sense, it's I'd say the law is a little bit less settled in this field than about religious artifacts at town hall and things of that nature. But that might be one approach to see what happens.
what's the pleasure of the council? Do you want to just make that a policy statement that we shy away from it? If somebody really challenges it, they're going to ask to talk to the manager. The manager will report back to us. We'll have to make a decision.
I'd like to see that policy put in place.
Is
I
there,
don't agree with Mr. Howell, but that's okay. You never discussed this.
I think, instead of having a party booth, you could have a open space preservation task force booth. You agree with me now, Mr. Costigan?
Yeah, but I'm nothing against Howell.
I think Mr. Howell's point is that he would like to see people behave as adults regardless of why they're there. And I don't think that there was an issue with that at this year's Howell Day.
There's never been, in all the years I've been going, there's never been an event, an altercation, if you will.
And I also think that since Howell Day is going to be pushed, accelerated into September, even if it's not the 15th, it's the 22nd, it may be a little too early for the heavy-hitting political people to be out there.
The only fireworks in 2005 were me and the mayor.
That's common. That's just getting to the old hat at this point. So do you agree with Mr. Howell, or I'm not certain?
I don't agree
Mayor-
with Mr.
Okay,
Howell.
so then it's a moot point for now. We got plenty of time to work it out.
Now, just to, always happy to hear, council's comments, but things like this, if it's the pleasure of the council, we can list it for discussion, so we have an opportunity to research it a little more, and maybe kind of get a consensus of what other rec departments do in the region.
Well, as of now, it's 2-2, so we'll have to see what Mrs. Showmaker says when she's over her virus.
All right.
What else do you have, Mr.
I
Howell?
have just one last thing. I received an email from a coach in the Howell Girls Softball League of the team that my wife happened to sponsor. One of the players on his team, and I won't say her name, contracted mononucleosis, and I guess sometime late last week. On Saturday, she went to a local hospital. On Sunday, she had to be flown to Children's Hospital in Philadelphia because apparently the disease attacked her blood cells. She's presently in a coma. She will have to undergo chemotherapy, and I would just ask that everybody here, no matter, we don't agree. You and I always aren't going to agree, but I think we can all agree that tonight would be a really good night to say an extra prayer. So, that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. Mr. Walsh? What do you have for us?
Yeah, just a few things here. Councilwoman Dalton, I'll be glad to do either the first 2 miles or the last 2 miles of that walk. We did get a letter in our package here about, Mr. Nunziata, about the road that was repaved over at Laurel Place and Lanes Pond Road. Have you looked into that at all? Have you seen that?
Yes, we did a temporary fix because the water was ponding in that area. So we made a temporary fix in-house to address the deep puddle that was there, and it is on our punch list for Stavola to address. As that was as Lane's Mill was part of the paving that was done on the recent contract.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So a few things. It's nice to see we got another $60,000 grant Chief Carter had applied for. That was just recently, I believe. Correct, Mr. C?
Yes.
That's very nice. I've also spoken a little bit to the Deputy Manager, Ms. Schlegel, about, I was talking with the grants writer from Brookdale College, and we'll be going out to lunch as soon as I remember her name. Okay? But I have her cards at home, and we'll get together. There was some very interesting concepts that she had, and I think it'd be some useful information in the future, maybe some other place to get some grant money from the state, okay?
Look forward to it.
I am very happy to see some very positive press about Howell Township in the paper. It does sicken me to see the papers writing a lot of negative stuff about the town, and it saddens my heart a lot of the time. Some people may get some joy out of it. Personally, I don't get any. I've been following Howell wrestling for a few years now, and there's just an article in the paper that our wrestling coach, John Gagliano, who's coach of the team for the last 10 years, is now the most winningest coach in Howell Township history. It was nice to see a shining article about him. It's a great organization. In our high school, the previous coaches back from the 70s and 80s were there that night to help present him with the little plaque. It was real nice to see. And the Asbury Park Press just did a beautiful, beautiful article on Marine Reserve Sergeant Craig Renner, who did a 50-mile walk to Trenton. To me, that's what epitomizes Howell, what I'd like to see more of from all of our residents. So it's a nice article, shines a positive light on the township, and it is a beautiful place to live, as we all know. I'd love to see more of it and less of the other stuff, which I shred. I didn't bring none of it with me tonight. God bless you, folks. I would like to see everybody also say a prayer for the mayor's family, as they have some pressing medical needs also, and we've spoken about it a little bit.
Thank you.
A lot to be prayerful for.
Thank you very much. I just had a couple of quick things. This past Saturday night, Deputy Mayor and Councilman Howell and Councilwoman Dalton and I attended the Howell First Aid Squad's annual swearing-in dinner. It was a wonderful event. They celebrated their 50-year anniversary. It's quite a milestone, and it's an incredible group of people. They really they do a fantastic job. All of our EMS agencies do. In particular, they were celebrating their 50th anniversary, and many of the charter members of the squad were actually there. In fact, the original member who started the squad, one individual among many, but the first person was actually fortunate enough to be there, is in great health, and it was a real special evening. The week prior, I had the pleasure of swearing in the new officers of the Southern Fire Company at their annual dinner. Chris Jackson, who is a valued employee of the township, is actually the chief this year. So we wish Chief Jackson all of the best, and another group of tremendous individuals. The other piece of good news was that the state of New Jersey has intervened on the frequency engineering property. This did get some coverage in the newspaper. An agreement has been reached with the new owners of frequency engineering and with the State Department of Environmental Protection for them to implement a cleanup program. So really great news for the people that live in that area The land was subdivided so that some commercial development can begin there immediately on the properties that were not impacted by the contamination. And now at least we know that the regulators have stepped in, and they're going to make certain that the contaminated areas have to be cleaned appropriately. So with the conclusion of the bankruptcy settlement, and now with the state intervening, a new owner, it really appears as if the Frequency Engineering site, the former FEL site, really is on its way of becoming a viable commercial and industrial rateable for the community again, and that's real terrific news. The only other comment, and I don't want to get too much into it, to Mr. Chernetsky is we're all beginning to hear some rumblings about the reevaluation hearings. I warned you just quickly as an aside, I might mention it. It's not an easy process, and people will naturally be unhappy with it, but I'm starting to get some feedback that maybe the people from the firm have at times demonstrated a less than cordial bedside manner. So I would ask, and the council agrees, that we kind of remind this firm, they've been around a while, even when the resident gets a little upset, they have to understand the dynamics of the situation. And so I don't appreciate, I'm sure the rest of the council doesn't appreciate, that they're unhappy they have to come here because of this process, and then they feel leaving as if they've been mistreated or potentially spoken to in a manner that is rather unprofessional. So it's hearsay at this point, but I've gotten enough phone calls from people from Freewood Acres, Ramtown, Candlewood, where various people have come back to me with the same comment that they did not feel they were treated the way they should have been as taxpaying residents. So if you would take that message back to the agency that
I will.
I'm personally not happy if any one of our residents was treated inappropriately. I'm not certain if anyone else has heard similar things or not, or disagrees, but if you take that back, I would appreciate
I
it.
certainly will.
Anything else under reports? All right, we'll then get right to our agenda. We have our consent agenda items. Mr. Chernetsky did hand me a note that we've got a note here from a resident asking us if we would open up the public. It's from Mrs. Dixell for a variety of items that were added tonight that are going to be acted on tonight that the public has not had an opportunity to comment on it. It's a fair observation. So I asked the pleasure of the council with respect to these items, and they're all, incidentally, they are all consent agenda items. Whether or not we'd like to temporarily open up public on these comments that the public has not had a chance to comment on.
Who requested that, Mayor?
Mrs. Dixell.
No problem.
We have a motion?
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we're going to open up for the public. Mrs. Dixell, why don't you come on up, Mrs. Dixell? We'll recognize you first. Mrs. Dixell asked that we comment on the following items. I'm going off her sheet. It starts with, and Mrs. Dixell, if you have other comments for later, we'd ask that you hold them. Let's just talk about these, please.
What I said, hold on.
No, you're good. All right, so the first item you had was 9B2, authorized place-to-place transfer, Ruby Tuesdays, Route 9, and Lanes Mill Road. Mr. Chernetsky, who can comment on this? It's page 3 on the agenda.
Yeah, okay. Mayor, this is, it is the council's responsibility to authorize liquor license transfers. And this restaurant is nearing the point of opening, except for a few items that they need to address with the engineering department. But it is the council's role to authorize liquor license transfers.
Okay. So this is normal course?
Correct.
Anything on this one, Mrs. Dixell?
No.
Okay.
My main concern is, because it's a workshop and because the consent agenda will be voted on before the public comment, I feel that the public has a legal right to know what's being voted on before you people vote on it.
I think we agree, which is why we're going to
All right.
go through them now.
That's it. That's my comments.
Okay, 9B5, it's authorizing an amendment to Resolution 438, Cool Cities CSIP Tree Planting Grant, the Candlewood Tree Planting Program. Mr. Chernetsky?
This item was previously acted upon, except there was a slight error in the grant application where we indicated a percentage match from the township, but we're required to have a exact dollar figure. So we're simply changing that old resolution.
Okay. 9B, 9, and 10, Mrs. Dixell also has establishing finance review and ordinance review committees. Very briefly, Mrs. Dixell, the council agreed to establish a finance review committee and to reestablish the ordinance review committee. Each member of the council was given an opportunity to give comments on the crafting of the makeup, if you will, of those committees and what they would be charged to do. And when we get to that, we'll talk about those items.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, and 9B9, will that committee be reviewing bond money that's been sitting, about $30 million in bond money that's been sitting around doing nothing for umpteen bazillion years, to possibly reuse that money to reduce Howell Township's debt and the impact to its citizens?
Yes. All right, so 9B, 11, authorize supplemental grant contract Eisenberg Group for preparation of a Paris grant. What do you got, Mr. Chinesky?
The Paris grant is, I forget exactly what the acronym stands for, but it has to do with records management. And the state has launched an initiative to grant towns money to put together comprehensive record management systems. The firm we've been working with is also the firm that's been helping us obtain the grants. They're very aware of where we stand, what our needs are, and are in the best position to prepare the grant application.
Good, okay. 9B13, this is authorizing a change order number 1, parentheses, final, for resurfacing of 5 Points Road. This was done on I think on a grant. What do we have here, Mr. C?
I believe this is the item that Councilman Howell raised with respect to, he wanted more information on the cost of the flagmen and other items on the change order, because we were also awarding a contract for another road program, and there was a difference in the hourly cost for that same line item.
Okay.
And Mr. Howell asked us just to take a second look at that. It was a good catch on his part, but that was the contracted amount for that particular contract. And so there is no room for us to change that. So
Okay.
that was a holdover from a previous meeting.
Good.
Can I ask
18
9B13, can I ask a question?
On 13?
Yes.
Sure. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped over.
9B13.
Oh, okay. 13, go ahead.
9B13. Why is that road, 5 Points Road, being redone when it's a fairly new road and there's all new housing developments on it?
That road was done last year, Bob.
Yeah, this
was
is
already
last
done.
year's work. It was done
This-
about 12 or 13 months ago.
This is authorizing the final payment.
And wasn't some of that money from the county?
Yeah, it was
I
grant money.
believe it was.
Yeah, we got 5 Points Road on a grant. It had been applied for about 3 years ago.
Is that correct, Mr. Nunziato, do you remember?
It was a 2005 state aid grant, and they granted us about $160,000. So we put the difference on ourselves, but primarily that was grant money for that road.
And since I lived off the road, I
I know
remember
you live,
abstaining,
I know you live off the road,
I-
but there are other roads in Howell Township that need doing.
which is why
I know
I
you live there.
abstained.
Are there any of them in the villages?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take you there. By
Okay,
hand.
we're moving along. 9B18,
Be my pleasure, honey.
authorizing performance guarantee monies for Wawa Route 9 North. Mr. Chernetsky,
Consent agenda.
Okay,
standard course?
yes, this is a standard course. I don't know if there are any specific questions about it, but it's time, we get recommendations to release bonds when that time
Did
has
you have any
come.
specific questions on it, Mrs.
What are
Dixell?
they, what are they releasing, site improvements? What are they releasing?
Yes, Bill, please.
This was, again, modifications that was from a 1999 site plan. They did some modifications back then, and this is really just releasing the guarantee. All that work has been done,
Okay,
and it's just a bookkeeping release.
okay.
Good. 9B27 was the next one. Authorized preliminary sewer approval for Garrett and Terry Van Ness Temptation Acres on West Farms Road.
What preliminary sewer approval is simply an acknowledgement that the area has that utility available.
Okay. Okay. 28, the next one on Mrs. Dixell's list, it said, similar question. This is preliminary water approval for Spray City, Inc., Route 9 South and Adelphia Farmingdale Road.
Again, it just acknowledges that utility is available.
All right, the next was 33, authorized amendment resolution RO 6318, Community Forestry Management Plan, the NJDEP.
I'll let Helene, can you...
Ms. Schlegel, you want to take this?
the community forestry management plan.
Yeah, this was another one that had, I believe it was a 33% match in the resolution. They want an exact figure.
So we
So
just have
this
to
was
do it over
requested by the Shade Tree Commission.
Okay. And 9B38 is authorized preliminary sewer approval, Landmark Plaza Management.
What is it and where is it?
This is apparently on Route 9 in the southern direction. Where is Landmark Plaza specifically? Which one of those? Mr. Nunziato, if I may.
Well, is that the one right across from Lowe's, where the Ruby Tuesdays is going?
No, that's on, this is on South, so it's not across from Lowe's.
Okay. Landmark Plaza.
Did you have your question was, where was it, Mrs. Dixon?
What is it? Where is it?
I apologize. It does have a lot in block, but it doesn't reference an address on there, so it's part of the Route 9 South Sewer Project, so it's basically a tie into that system, so it's on Route 9 in that area.
I thought they weren't tying into the system, that only the people on Route 9 were going to have it.
That
They
is on
are.
Route
This
9.
is Route 9. This is on Route 9, Mrs. Dixon.
Is any, okay, so like I said, what is this? Preliminary sewer approval, Landmark Plaza Management, who are they?
Land-
And what are they going to do?
The plaza itself, my sense is, it's probably the larger entity of what apparently would be a strip mall. There's probably multiple retail
Okay, well, we can't say
entities.
probably, we don't know what it is, pull it.
I think Mr. Nunziato gave you the best description
No,
that
I'm
he had.
sorry, I'm not happy with that one. You need to pull this until you can give us a more in-depth, accurate explanation as to what this
Wait,
is.
Again, Barbara, under the rules and regulations of the sewer rules and regulations, a preliminary approval, all that does is it tells you whether or not sewer service is available. If it is, it allows you to tie into it, allows you to go to the
Well,
tentative.
don't you think you owe it to the people of this town to tell us what the heck it is and where it is and what
We
they're
can
going to
do that regardless. All it is the preliminary application saying either you go to the county for septic or you go to the municipality to go further. We can certainly get that for you for the next meeting or for the subsequent applications.
If I may, Mr. Bongiovanni, is there any reason why, in your legal judgment, we should hold off on moving on this?
Well,
I thought this was going to be adopted on.
it is.
Okay.
Right.
It
It's
is.
not on the agenda.
It's not on for
That's right.
action.
So is this
There
being
you
pulled?
go.
Barbara, just...
Well, it's not being acted on.
It's not on the,
It's on for February 20th for consideration for action.
I'm sorry, but 9B38 says engineer's memo dated 6.
No, Mrs. Dixon, the
just for
point is,
discussion.
there's a few items, if you notice, the items in italics with an asterisk, for example, 9B34, that's being acted on tonight.
Right.
We're not even taking action on 9B38
It
tonight.
doesn't say that. There's nowhere
Well,
does it say that.
Right, it would only say action being taken tonight, because this is the workshop meeting. So if it doesn't say action being taken tonight, that means it's just conventional workshop, and at our meeting in 2 weeks, that is
Okay.
when we'll take
Okay,
action,
so
and by
that's
that
fine.
point,
So that when you vote
we'll
on
have the
that,
answer.
so when you vote on this consent agenda tonight, say accept 9B38.
that's not how it's going to work. We're only taking action
Not
tonight
take- no.
on the items that are asterisked. So
Okay.
since this is a workshop, we're going to talk about them.
Okay.
Bill,
It is an existing building.
I just pulled this out.
Yeah.
It's in our packet. It says the applicant proposes to connect to an existing cleanout which was installed as part of the Route 9 South Sewer Project. The site is within the existing sewer service area on the Township of Howell wastewater management plan. So what they're doing, Barbara, is they're taking a building, I guess that was on septic, and now they're hooking into the Route 9 South Sewer so that we can start collecting fees from that.
Fine.
Right.
Like I said, just would be nice to know what it is.
Mr. Nunziato, can we get from Mrs. Dixell or Mr. Chinyetsky through you, sir, before our meeting in 2 weeks, we'll just give her more details on where this is.
I will try to make sure that any of the
Okay.
utility applications, be it
Good.
preliminary, tentative, or final, all have that more
Yeah,
specific
just that the
to them.
people of the town should have the right to know what it is.
Great.
That's a good question.
good point, Mr.
And-
God
and-
bless you.
If I can just put this
No
in the, Mayor,
Good question.
just put it in the proper context here, is what Ms. Dixell is doing is completely appropriate for our workshop.
Right.
We
That's right.
don't assume council's going to vote on anything. So we give you this opportunity of standard business to put on a consent agenda, but members of the council, based on public input or their own concerns, are free to pull any item that they wish.
Thanks, Mrs. Dixell.
I appreciate it. Thank
Okay.
you.
I'm just going to call the public's attention. Those items we're going to take action on tonight, because everything else is workshop only. We're going to talk about the details tonight and vote on it in 2 weeks. 9B5, 9B8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 33, and 34. In addition, 9C 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way through 9C 20. Anyone from the public who'd like to comment on any of those items that we're going to take action on tonight, you're welcome to come on up and give us any of your comments, specifically on those items. Anyone would like to come forward?
Mayor, my apologies, but
Yep.
I think there is a
Oh, there are some
updated,
add-ons.
there's an updated list of,
You're right, there are
Item
add-ons
correction.
that we're taking action on tonight. Let me add those. Looks like 9B4, oh, there's a bunch of them.
That'd be 40 to
40, yeah, the public doesn't even have these. Let me just say them out loud for the benefit of the public. We will also take action, which is not in your agenda, these were added by the management team. 9B40, authorizing a road opening on Newton's Corner Road. 41, authorizing execution of frequency configuration agreement with Nextel Communications. 9B42, awarding a contract to CME Associates of Howell Engineering Services for the forthcoming Freewood Acres Park. 9B43, a right-of-way easement, JCP&L. 9B44, appointing the Township Auditor, Samuel Klein. 9B45, appointing telecommunications consultant, Declan O'Scanlan. And those are to be taken on, those are all to be acted on tonight, is that right?
yes.
Okay, because then there's further that talk about, all right, those we've already commented on. Okay. Anyone who'd like to be heard or make comments on any of the ones I've just read aloud that we're going to take action on this evening, you're welcome to do so. Please come forward. Do we have the cordless, why don't you stay there, Mrs. Smith? You sure? We have a cordless mic.
Thank you.
Okay.
If I get this beat going right, it's not too bad.
That's right, Mr. Smith. You'll beat me around that 5-mile run at the reservoir. I promise you. I promise.
I hate to tell you, but until the knees and hips went completely, I used to walk 5 miles a day. It was nothing.
Good evening, Mrs. Smith. Welcome.
Hi.
If you just introduce yourself, please.
Pauline Smith, just 2 quick questions. Further explanation of your add-on, the 2 add-ons. I'm sorry I didn't catch the numbers, the last 2.
It's okay.
Just please, the site of the JCP&L easement,
Yeah, sure. It's along Route 33. We have a block and lot,
But not
which
an
obviously
address.
isn't of much help. It's probably in the back of, a member of the council has their book handier than mine. It is 9B43. It's a Jersey Central Power and Light easement. It is along Route 33. Why don't you go to your... Thank you, Councilman Howell. It says here, Mrs. Smith, that it's a 10-foot wide strip of land located on Block 177, Lot 35. And it's apparently Township's property. We're giving them a right-of-way along this 10-foot strip so that they can actually put up, it looks like they're putting in a transmission pole on the south side of Route 9, approximately, here it is, 50 feet west of the existing pole to service a new building at the Monmouth County Fire Academy.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And the other one, a little further description of what Mr. O'Scanlan will be doing for his contract?
Mr. O'Scanlan has been the Township's communications consultant. He has historically worked as our expert, if you will, testimony with the zoning board when matters have come up with respect to cell towers. His primary charge has been to identify Township-owned land that could be leased or sold, or some other creative way to have a cell tower company put their tower on a Township piece of land.
I'm familiar with
so that we
In
can
other
generate
words,
revenue.
It's just the extension of the same thing as last year.
It's an extension
Okay.
of his existing service.
Then I have a quick question, if you'll indulge me. There's an application before the Board of Adjustment, and it's my understanding from people there that people in attendance, that the engineer for the company, the applicant, said that there'll be no lights. And I'm concerned, do they mean the lights that, everything that's 120 feet tall has to have some kind of light for helicopters. And should I advise, because people called me to ask what they could do about it because they just want to make sure in their neighborhood. Direct question is, can anybody call and inquire of Mr. O'Scanlan, or should they request through the Board of Adjustment?
I think we prefer that they go through Ms. Capitan, because it may be something that she could more easily answer. Maybe it's been looked at by one of the professionals.
Or get in touch with him, and it's easier. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
we
good
we prefer
advice.
they go to
I'll
Ms.
tell.
Capitan. Great.
Okay,
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Did you have... Come on up, Mrs. Dixell.
thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Smith.
I don't want to run you over.
Looked like a Budweiser commercial.
That's right. That's right. Listen, between Pauline and I, we took bad backs, bad knees, but we're still going.
Mrs. Dixell,
Like
You
the
have-
Energizer Rabbit, we're still going.
you have a question on
Yeah,
Mr. O'Scanlan's
Declan
contract?
O'Scanlan. Okay, first of all, Howell has a height ordinance on these towers. Remember when I was working on this cell tower stuff, and I was partly responsible for this cell tower ordinance thing, we have a height ordinance, height and whatever, it has to be a certain amount of height to the existing buildings or to the existing whatever. They should have a light, or they should have some kind of something on top of these. But is Declan O'Scanlan, does he have anything to do with the people getting the public access channels? He has nothing to do with that?
His job is, his historic position was to find a way to use township-owned property to raise new revenue streams by using our property to have these many cell tower companies that want better access to their customers, and we would lease them our land to put a tower on it. That's been his primary role.
And that has nothing to do
Not with
with
cable
public
TV.
access stations or even anything else on these other towers that may be?
No.
Okay.
No, he's solely responsible
All right,
for
I'll
cell
comment on
phone.
everything later.
Okay, thanks,
Thank
Mrs.
you.
Dixell. Anyone else from the public on the actions we're going to be hearing from this evening, or taking action on tonight? All right, well, then we'll go back, at council's pleasure, we'll get right into our consent agenda items. Since this is a workshop, what I would ask that we do first is maybe just go through the ones we're not going to take action on. This way, if there's something we have a question or clarification on, we'll let Mr. Cherniatsky or the right professional know. This begins with 9B1. Any questions on 9B1 to 9B8?
We're taking action on 5 though, right?
We will come back and take action on,
5 and 8.
yep, on 5 and 8. All right, on the top of the next page, 9B9 and 9B20, excluding obviously the ones we'll take action on. Questions or comments?
Excluding the ones we take.
Ms. Dalton, you have?
We're taking action on 9B10 and 9B9.
Yes.
It appears that way. I didn't know, but
If it's
Okay. Are we going to do those collectively, or are we going to?
I think what we should probably do is
Take
have a
them out.
separate vote
So
on,
that-
on each of those individually.
So that we can review the
Yeah.
names.
Agreed. Anything else between 9B9 and 9B20? All right, 9B21 to 9B31.
21 to 30.
These appear to be authorizing various approvals, water and sewer. Any questions on these? Okay. 9B32 to 39. And again, there's a few here we have to revisit. All right, and it looks like we have under motions, under 9C 1, 2, and 3 at least, we've got an appoint member to vacancy for cultural arts, accept the resignation of a member of the Broadcast Advisory Committee, person moved out of town, as I recall, they sent us a note, and accept the resignation of an Affordable Housing Committee member. So we'll revisit those for a separate vote. 9C 4 to 9C 19 appear to be traditional taxi license and raffle approvals. Anything out of the ordinary here, Mr. Cherniatsky?
No, sir.
Okay. And then 9C 20 is a schedule a shade tree commission presentation on tree planting. So we can come back and revisit that. Any questions on any of those items from a workshop perspective? All right, well, what I might recommend then is, I believe we have to formally take action to add a variety of items to the agenda, Ms. Woolman? Okay. I'd ask to someone to make a motion, please, to go into regular session.
So moved, Mayor.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. This is merely to go into regular session. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, so we have, with respect to resolutions, 9B 40 to 9B 40, I'm just going off of our add-on worksheet. I'd ask that someone make a motion, please, to add on Articles 9B 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45. In addition, with respect to ordinances, 9A 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And in addition, some further resolutions, including 9B 5, 8, 9, 11, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 33, 34, 41, 42, 43, 44, and 45. And with respect to motions, 9C 1 to 19.
Well, we're going to take 9 and 10 out. Is that correct, Mayor?
Yeah, all we're doing is, this is just a motion to add them onto the agenda. So we need a motion to add those items onto the agenda. Is that right, Ms. Woolman? Yeah, that's right. Okay.
So moved, Mayor.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second.
This is just to add on. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, so if we go to these items individually, if we go to all of the 9 items, if we start with 9B 5, this is amendment of the resolution, Cool Cities Tree Planting Grant. I believe you said, Ms. Schlegel, this is just an update on a percentage?
That's correct.
Okay. I'd ask for a motion, please, on 9B 5.
So moved.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second.
Any comments? Hearing none, roll call, please, 9B 5.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. 9B8 is creating the appointment of a series of alternate municipal prosecutors. We did discuss this previously. I asked a member of the council to please introduce 9B8.
I'll move that, Mr. Mayor.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second.
Any remarks on 9B8? Hearing none, roll call.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes,
Mr. Mayor, I have a point of order.
please.
I would like to know, I think it may be acceptable for us to do all of the items on the consent agenda all at once.
We usually do, and I'm going to, in fact, recommend, I wanted to get, knowing that this was an appointment of the prosecutor, in case anyone wanted to look at it separately, what I would like to recommend is that we move on the following items collectively, which would include, excluding 9B 9 and 10, that we move 9B 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 33, 40, 41, 42, and 43, and that we have a separate vote in case there is discussion with respect to the appointments of 45, 44, 10, and 11.
9 and
So
10, Mayor.
move, yeah, I'm sorry, 9 and 10. So moving all items excluding 9B 10, 9B 11, 9B 44, and 45. If someone would make that motion, we can move them all at once.
So moved.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second, Mayor.
Any comments? These are all of the items excluding
Wait a minute, you said we're excluding 9B, 10, and 11.
9B, I'm sorry, it's 9 and 10. Those are the two
9 and 10 are
committees.
separate.
And 44 and 45 because they're appointments. Now, the only other technical observation is we have 9C1 here, which is appointing a member to cultural arts. Is the council going to act on that tonight? Do we have someone to fill that slot? We do.
Do we?
I mean, I know there's applications,
names
but I'm
in the
not certain
package.
who wanted to offer that up. So then let me ask the maker of the motion if they would just, for ease, would they agree to act on 9C1 separately because there may be more than one nomination?
Yeah, I'd rather act on that separately and vote on it next week if possible,
Okay.
so I can review the
Will
applicants.
you agree, Mr. Howell, to amend your motion?
Yes, Mayor, I do.
Okay. And who seconded, Ms. Dalton?
Yes,
You'll agree?
sure.
Okay. Roll call, please, on all of the items excluding those we just mentioned, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. I think we can move easier on the 44 and 45. So first, ask a member of the council to please motion or introduce, if you will, the appointment of Samuel Klein as Township Auditor.
Make a motion to appoint Samuel Klein and Company as our township auditor.
We have a
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any remarks?
I'd like to make a remark.
Go ahead.
Pretty simple. Last year, I believe, in the last 2 years, our township auditor cost $84,000. We went to a larger company that we almost hired last year, but for reasons I won't get into. We didn't, and Samuel Klein and Company they agreed to do our auditing this year for $60,000, and the savings of $24,000 to the township. Very happy about that.
Any other comments? The public bidding process works. All right, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes, and 9B45, I'd ask a member of the council to move on 9B45, telecommunications consultant.
So moved, Mayor.
All right, we have a motion to appoint telecommunications consultant Declan O'Scanlan. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, council's discussion on 9B9. This is establishing a finance review committee. And I believe we have some material in our packet. Mr. Chinesky, do you want to make any general comments about this?
Yes. Mr. Palazzo, our deputy finance officer, was tasked with reaching out to other communities that are organized under our form of government, who've adopted a finance or budget review committee. And basically, he was instrumental, his research was instrumental in crafting the items that the committee is going to be charged with reviewing, and actually he's going to serve as a staff liaison to that committee to help do whatever research is required. I think one of the more exciting things, and getting back to the public comment about looking at our debt, is the ICMA, the International City and County Managers Association, has published a publication entitled Municipal Economic Indicators. And we thought for council's consideration that was an excellent project for this committee to undertake, where they look at a variety of indicators and to measure economic health and to give council some policy guidance as to where they want to be in various areas of our local economy. And one of those is helping us craft a long-term debt management policy, which inherently would include a review of our outstanding bond ordinances. Other things that the committee would be charged with doing would be reaching out to the schools and other municipalities to see where there's opportunities for joint or shared services, doing public information as to taxation and what really comes into the municipality and what goes out goes out to other entities, and looking at whether some things that we outsource things, whether it makes sense to insource them, and vice versa, whether we ought to be outsourcing some services. So they'll be doing that sort of research and making policy recommendations.
Don't use that bad word.
And also they would be charged with looking at the master plan from the revenue point of view and advising the planning board and the council as to what type of developments generate different types of revenues. So it is, I think we've crafted a mission for the committee that would truly serve as a policy arm of the council.
All right, any comments? In our packet, we do have, obviously, the resolution, and behind it is the detail, which Mr. Chunietsky just articulated. It lists A to G as the committee's functions. Any comments or changes with respect to the draft resolution?
I'd like to make a couple comments, please, Mayor.
Please.
One, I had offered, and maybe it's something we need to vote on, to be the liaison to the budget, to the finance committee. I'm put in as the liaison to the ordinance review committee.
You want to switch?
I always said from the beginning that I would do the budget.
Any objection to Mr. Walsh being on the budget committee?
No.
None.
You've just been hired.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to working with your deputy CFO, Lou Palazzo. I'm not good with last names. Lou P.
Palazzo.
Palazzo? I'll work on it.
Seen here, Councilman Walsh.
Deputy Mayor.
It's okay. But I would like to say something. I mean, for putting out an ad and for, advertising it, we've gotten some tremendous applications for people volunteering for these committees in the township. MBAs, accountants, people that have been controllers of companies. It is pretty amazing when I look at the resumes. I wish I was hiring. I'd hire 4 or 5 of them. We have some group of citizens that have never been active before, some of them, and they're volunteering to go on these committees. And it's nice to see as many fresh, intelligent eyes as possible that can help us save some money for the residents of town. It'll be nothing but positive. Because it's not going to be to butcher the budget. I mean, a lot of taxes are what they are, but there are some things we could probably cut. There are a lot of innovative ideas. We're already talking to a lot of different places about some shared services and some other things we can do. And I think some of the policies put in place by the mayor and former administration have helped get us along, too. And I think it'll be nothing but a positive for the township. I'm looking forward to serving on the Budget Review Committee. If possible, I'd like to have it in my house around a table so I can wear my robe and slippers. There's been other meetings at my home. And I think it'll be a very good thing for the township. And, thank you.
Any other comments, at least on the technical parameters of the resolution? Were you all comfortable with the committee's charter?
Yep.
All right, so is it the pleasure of the council to make appointments and recommendations, or do we want to approve this, review the applications, and make appointments at a later date? It's your call.
I say approve and review. I haven't had a chance. I mean, a whole bunch of new ones have come in the last
Okay.
couple days. We haven't even had a chance to discuss or look at, really. I'd like to call a few of them.
Can we, then, I think
The
we'll,
ordinance, the resolution was drafted that. The resolution was drafted that way.
Great.
To give you the option of doing it tonight or
Okay.
doing it the next practical time.
can we at least approve the resolution creating the committee?
Yes.
And then we'll come back and entertain.
By motion. That's
By
what the
motion.
resolution says.
That's
And it
great.
should also be as amended to change the liaison.
To have a council liaison. Is it actually, I flipped the page already, does it actually say there's a council liaison?
Well, are we talking about budget, finance committee right now?
Finance.
Yeah. well,
Yes,
I think
it's a
it had-
blank spot. In number
Okay.
3, it says the committee shall have a township liaison who shall be.
So we'll
Robert
make
Francis
that
Walsh.
appointment.
Right.
And then, okay. Any other comments? All right, I'd ask a member of the council to please make a motion for the creation of the Budget Review Committee, in addition to naming Deputy Mayor Walsh as the liaison.
Mayor, I make that motion.
And we need a second.
Second.
Any additional remarks?
Somebody else had to make it. My wife would have my head if I volunteered for some more time away from the house. So.
Are we going to, when will we be making this, these appointments then? I mean, I don't want it to
Can
go
we
another
review them
month.
at our meeting in 2 weeks? Is that
We'll
is
list
that
that.
enough time for everybody?
It's fine with me.
Okay.
Fine.
Any other remarks? All right, roll call, please, on 9B9.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, the next one is 9B10, establishing an ordinance review committee. Call everyone's attention to our backup material on that item.
Mayor, I think we should, obviously we take your lead, but I would believe that we should probably just follow the same parameters and just establish the committee. My personal preference would be to have Councilwoman Dalton as the council liaison to the ORC. And then just adopt the resolution establishing the committee, and then in 2 weeks, we could name the individuals to the board or vote on the individuals to appoint to that board. So if that's,
Great.
I'll make that motion.
So the motion is create the committee, name Mrs. Dalton as liaison, and then we'll come back and do appointments after we've had a chance to review them.
Correct.
Okay. Is there a second?
Yeah, I need to. Take it out.
the liaison?
Yes. Yeah, we're going to change the liaison, as we said, to Mrs. Dalton.
Yeah. And number 9 has Councilwoman Joseph DeBella in 2003. That's got to come out too.
Yeah,
No.
I
I
think
think that's the old.
that's the,
I-
that was
That's
the
the
original version.
This is the original version, I just put in there for historical.
Historic. All right, I'll take a ride with Pauline and Don Smith if I want a history lesson.
I didn't put it in the book.
All right, we still need a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any remarks? creating an ordinance review committee with Councilwoman Dalton as liaison. All right, no further remarks. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. We also then need a separate action on 9C1, appointment, member to vacancy, Cultural Arts Committee.
Yep.
Are we in agreement? We're not, I thought I heard somebody say they may have somebody for this. We don't. All right, so is there agreement that we will table 9C1 until,
Whatever applications are on file in the clerk's office
Okay.
in your book, you can have them again on the 20th, but just so you know.
yeah, I think we got them all. We probably just need a chance to go through them.
Chance to look at it.
Fair enough?
Fair enough.
All right, so we'll table this until our meeting in 2 weeks.
1, 2, and 3, or just 1?
I believe it is just one because the others were resignations. And we already moved on 2 and,
We'll need to appoint a member to those vacancies.
we will as soon as we get applications, right?
Okay, no problem.
All right, so just a motion, please, to table 9C1 for 2 weeks.
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
We need a second.
Second.
Roll call, please. Tabling 9C1.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, if we go back to our regular agenda, we have,
I'm getting whiplash, man.
we covered everything on, we didn't. Okay, what did we miss on add-ons?
Motion was made for 9C4-19. Those were the, just the standard raffles, bingo license, taxi
I
license.
thought we did
We
when.
did.
With the regular, maybe I just
Yeah,
overlooked it.
but we
And
made the
9
motion to move all of them.
Okay, great, and I'll add that to that motion. Also, 9C20, we're just going to, I guess, maybe look at some future Township Council meeting dates.
9C20.
20.
I vote no.
9C20. Yeah, we just
Oh.
have to schedule Shade Tree Commission presentation. I just asked the manager and the clerk if you'd work on when you can get that into our meeting agenda.
Sure. Now, there's a little, there's something behind this that I think it, following Robert's rules, that I think it makes sense for whenever there's a request to make a presentation, that council authorize it, and also generally set a time limit as a policy for presentations. So
Give us the background. What are they, I mean, obviously it's Shade Trees presenting something. It says here, tree planting grant. So what is it that they're presenting?
They're going to be presenting information regarding that Cool Cities grant that you saw in there. They want to do a short presentation just to explain, and it'll help them also get out to the public as to where the trees are going, what the homeowners are expected to do, whether you have to have a tree, whether or not. Just a little bit of, it's really an educational, informative session, a short presentation.
How much time do they need?
15 minutes.
All right, I'd ask a member of the council to make a motion to agree having the presentation for a period, generally to be about 15 minutes at a time that can be arranged by the manager.
So moved, Mayor.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good, that's an easy one, okay. So we'll just quickly go back to the ordinances, Section 8A1. We have some items here tonight, some for action, I believe some not. 8A1 is amending land use ordinance installation of water meters. This was introduced on the 16th. It's slated for public hearing and adoption on the 20th. Any final council questions on this item?
Mayor, I had contacted the deputy manager about that. I understand why we want to do that is because of the problems on 524. But I can tell you that one of the problems that, or one of the things that I've been seeing in the Ramtown section of Howell, is I have people down there that are coming to my business, and because of the amount of water, the water rate increase, wanted to know how it would be possible for them to hook up their irrigation wells to their water lines in their house so that they didn't have to pay for the water, which is absolutely illegal for a number of reasons. One of them is that the water company doesn't want to lose the money. The second is that those wells aren't tested and you can contaminate the entire water system. So I would just, my concern with the installation of the 2 water meters would be that, we want to ensure that they're not close enough where a homeowner may try to circumvent paying water and sewer fees by cross-connecting the two different lines. So is it possible for us to require that when these are put in, that the meters are put in on opposite sides of the structure, or that one's inside, one's outside, so that we eliminate the ability for cross-connection?
Right. I understand the concern. We actually met with American Water today with respect to this ongoing issue. And what the water company's policies are is that, well, except in the case of this neighborhood, which is, issues are being worked out there, they want two lines. So the meters could be together or next to each other. And it won't be an issue because they're not coming off the same line. They'll be coming off two different lines. And the reason for that is there's a concern about, down the road, 10, 15 years, about water pressure issues. So they want the domestic lines to be completely separated from the non-domestic lines.
Right, well, that's, obviously, that's what I was getting at. My point is that, I'm in a water business, so I go into houses and I see things that people have done that they shouldn't do, and I've actually seen situations where somebody will cut the line before the domestic meter, and they'll run their house water through the irrigation meter because the irrigation meter doesn't get charged sewer. So by separating the meters, not the lines are already separated, but by separating the meters, having one on one side of the house, one on the other side of the house, you don't allow for that to happen. Or if one meter is, the irrigation meter is outside the house, the residential meter is inside the house, that can't happen.
Okay. That, I have to admit, this is the first I'm hearing of that type of problem. We could look into it, definitely, but I would ask council to let us research that, but still consider this ordinance because
Right,
we need to have that policy in
I
place.
just want to
Yeah.
see if there's a way that at some point in time, if we can tweak it just to allow for that not to occur.
Yeah. Just let us research that.
Doesn't the water company come and check the meters, though?
They don't come into the house. They have the reader outside the house. It's electronic. That's why you see that little black box out. Well,
Right.
you probably don't.
They
I
are
don't
they
know
are
what
getting.
that black box is, Mike. You're talking to the wrong guy.
All right,
The
so
water
there-
company
there-
is getting away from interior meters
Right.
Yep.
for the number of reasons.
So you'll look into Mr. Howell's concern. As of now, this is slated for a public hearing and a potential adoption on February 20th. Did you have a question, Ms. Dalton? I'm sorry.
Well, I have a comment on the ordinance.
Of course,
This
please.
is the workshop time when we're supposed to talk about it.
Yep.
I understand the reason for this ordinance coming into being, but I am concerned that we are establishing by this ordinance a blanket policy for the entire town, which really only affects a very small portion of residences, those which are in the sewer system where sewer charges are calculated as a function of 2 times the water consumption. I don't understand the need to put an added expense on a builder, which is then put onto a homeowner to have a second water meter when there is no connection between the sewer charge and the water charge. And what I'd like to know is why we can't restrict this regulation to those circumstances where there's a separate sewer charge based on consumption. I mean, most people who have a sewer bills in this township have a flat rate sewer charge.
Right. This requires the builder to install it, first of all. So I think it's important to bear in mind, because these are good questions, and we raise these questions at a staff level as well. But a couple things to bear in mind. One is maybe not this council or the next council, but down the road, who knows what the issues might be, and it may make sense for all utilities to be privatized. Now, or some are sold or whatever, but the point is that was told to me that the cost of installing the domestic meter at the time of construction is exponentially less than going back and installing it after the fact. So, and we're talking about a couple $100 for that meter if you're installing it at the time. So it makes great sense, and it's always your option not to use it.
And, you know, for me, I mean, this isn't the first development this has happened with on 524. You know, last year we debated this pretty intensely. There was some heated discussions, I believe, over Middle School North, I believe we were, Mayor. And, you know, Councilman Tabasco, I give him credit. You know, he said, I dropped the ball. You know, this should have been corrected a long time ago. And long before the prior administration, this has been an issue in Howell Township. And who knows what's going to happen in years to come. And, you know, if it affects 500 more people in Howell Township, that's 500 too many. You know, it doesn't, you know, for me, I strongly have sat there and scratched my head and said when this was first became an issue, and I don't know how long it was. The first time I remember becoming an issue was behind Home Depot, and that was about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. But before then, some people have told me it was an issue. I mean, why wasn't it addressed then? You know, and I think everybody's to fault, and maybe nobody is, but the bottom line is something needs to be done about it now to see that it never happens again.
Also, all this ordinance does is it requires the installation of 2 meters, which, you know, also requires, at the time of construction, based on what the water company tells us, to run 2 lines. Now, residents can always choose to turn off that second line, so that second meter isn't running. If they feel it's in their interest to tap the domestic line for irrigation, in that case, because there's just a flat rate, the idea of the second meter is to benefit those residents who it would benefit.
You know what, I just have a question. Are the homeowners going to wind up paying 2 meter charges now? You know, like when you get your water bill, they say, okay, you got a 3/4 inch meter, your bill is this much a month. So if you have that meter in your house and it's never turned on, are you still going to get popped for, you know, $60 a month even though you don't use it?
It all depends on the utility. But again, you may turn that, if you're not using it, you can turn it off.
Right, but will you still get billed for having it in your house?
Again, it depends on the utility, and I can look into that.
Okay.
Well, I think that may affect a lot more residents than the consumption charge for sewer, so I would appreciate that answer too.
Yeah. Now, at my house, it came with 2 meters, and I don't use the second one. I don't have an irrigation system, and I don't pay that second charge.
Okay.
So again, I think it all depends on the company, but I will check with American Water just as a point of information and get back to you.
All right, so between now and the 20th, you'll get back to us on these issues prior to the public hearing.
One more thing, man?
Please, go right ahead.
I would like to say one more thing to all the residents of Howell Township, that Assemblyman Malone really went above and beyond on this issue for the residents of Howell Township. He's been here numerous times, kind of mediated the talks with American Water and the Bill to Lennar, and been giving advice to all of us about which direction to go in and how to construct the ordinance, you know, to protect the residents of Howell. And I would really like to say thank you to him. It was nice to see an Assemblyman taking his time to come down here, and he really took it to heart what had happened. And it happened, he found out about it on Howell Day. As he was walking around, one of the residents that went up to him, Rob DeCastro, who was a little bit of a pain, he said, but but I really commend him. I saw government at its finest from him. I'm really appreciative of that. Watching somebody stand up, do what they were so elected to do, and did it with joy and with passion, trying to help us. And I'd like to let the people of Howell know that that's my opinion of that Assemblyman and what he did here.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. All right, any questions or comments on 8A2, which is the mini bike penalties and provisions, or 8A3, the establishment of a bus stop along Route 9 in the area of Northwood Place? These are both slated to have a public hearing and a vote on February 20th. Any comments or questions on any of those? Okay, for new business, we have introductions of ordinances These are slated to be introduced, I believe, on February 20th. Is that right, Mr. Trinescu?
Based on the add-on agenda, we are asking council if they'd consider acting on a few of these this evening for introduction, so we don't have 10 hearings all at once.
Right. All right, so that happens to be, you want us to act on 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, so just get everyone's attention. This is just an introduction only to open up the debate. So the first is the Woodlands Management Plan. I'd ask a member of the council to please proceed. This is just
And Mayor, I can comment on these if you'd like as we go along.
hold on 1 second. Give us 1 second.
9A1.
Yeah, we're looking at 9A1, please.
Want to read, Mayor?
It's in our add-on packet.
I have one here.
Yeah, there it is. Okay.
Excuse me?
We'd ask that you read the introduction statement from your add-on package.
I just gave it to the deputy mayor.
Motion to introduce ordinance number 0-07-4 on first reading by title and to order the same to be published in full in the 2907 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of its introduction and passage on first reading by title. That will be further considered for final passage of public hearing at a meeting of the Township Council to be held on 3607 at 7:30 p.m. prevailing time in the municipal building.
We have a motion, we need a second, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. This is merely to introduce. Ms. Woolman, would you please read the ordinance by title?
An ordinance of the Township of Howell, Monmouth County, New Jersey, amending Chapter 188, Land Use, Article 2, entitled Development Application Requirements to correct an inaccuracy in the existing ordinance.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, next is 9A2, merely an introduction. This is AHB at Howell on Fairfield Road. The ordinance makes application applicable to provisions of Subtitle 1 of Title 39, various traffic regulations. Member of the council, please.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to motion to introduce ordinance number 0-07-5 on first reading by title and to order the same to be published in full in the 2907 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of its introduction and passage on first reading by title, and that it will be further considered for final passage after public hearing at a meeting of the Township Council to be held on March 6, 2007 at 7:30 p.m. prevailing time in the municipal building.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second, Mayor.
Motion and a second. Ms. Woolman, would you please read the title of the ordinance?
An ordinance of the Township of Howell, Monmouth County, New Jersey, authorizing Block 177, lots 129.01 and 130 at Fairfield Road, a minor subdivision, to be subject to Subtitle 1, Title 39 of the revised with traffic regulation statutes of New Jersey applicable to said roadways, streets, driveways, and parking lots by motor vehicles.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes?
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, 9A3, this is amending the Preservation Task Force, adding 2 alternate members. Asking a member of the council, please proceed.
Mayor, I make a motion to introduce ordinance number 0-07-6 on first reading by title and to order the same to be published in full in the February 9, 2007 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of its introduction and passage on first reading by title, and that it will be further considered for final passage after public hearing at a meeting of the Township Council will be held on March 6, 2007 at 7:30 p.m. prevailing time in the municipal building.
We have a motion, we need a second, please.
Second, Mayor.
We have a second. Ms. Woolman, would you please read the title of the ordinance?
An ordinance of the Township of Howell, Monmouth County, New Jersey, amending Chapter 2, Article 7, Section 2-51, to provide for 2 additional alternate members to the Preservation Task Force.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes?
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. 9A4, we're adding a alternate position to Farmers Advisory. Member of the council, please.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to introduce ordinance number 0-07-7 on first reading by title and to order the same to be published in full in the 2907 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of its introduction and passage on first reading by title. That'll be further considered for final passage after public hearing at a meeting of the Township Council to be held on 3607 at 7:30 p.m. prevailing time in the municipal building.
Second?
We have a second. Ms. Woolman, would you please read the title?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 2, Article 6, entitled Departments, to provide for 2 alternate members of the Farmers Advisory Committee.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, 9A5, salary ordinance for township planner. Member of the council.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to introduce ordinance number 0-07-8 on first reading by title and to order the same to be published in full in the 2907 issue of the Asbury Park Press, together with notice of its introduction and passage on first reading by title, and that it will be further considered for final passage after public hearing at a meeting of the Township Council to be held on February 20th, 2007 at 7:30 p.m. prevailing time in the Municipal Building.
We have a motion. We need a second, please.
Second, Mayor.
Okay, roll call, please. I'm sorry, please read the title.
Okay. An ordinance to amend an ordinance entitled, "An Ordinance Fixing Salary and Compensation of Certain Officers, Positions, and Employees in the Township of Howell, County of Monmouth, New Jersey, for the year 2007, and thereafter known by its short name as Howell Township Salary Ordinance, and any hereto authorized amendments to said ordinance."
Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
No. All right, 9A6, this is amending land use ARE2, and then 9A7 is amending HD3, 9A8 is amending the R1. Mr. Chinesky, do you want to just give the overview? Is this in conjunction with master plan-related items? Because they're all slated for February 20th introduction.
Yes, sir. These are, we're going to take another crack at the master plan ordinances, a slightly different approach this time, kind of breaking the town up into sections and looking at the zoning map that way.
Okay. All right, what's the pleasure of the council? I mean, obviously, we're not taking action tonight. Maybe we can ask you, Mr. Cherniatsky, if you can give us a brief synopsis of each of these, just a couple of moments on each one, and then we'll entertain, obviously, questions and comments from the council.
Mary, referring to the ones we just introduced?
No, we haven't gotten to, we will be introducing on the 20th, 9A, 6, 7, and 8,
Okay, the land use ones.
the land use ones.
Okay.
So from a workshop perspective, perhaps you can maybe just
Sure.
spend a couple of minutes overviewing for everyone's benefit what we're being
Okay.
asked to introduce on the 20th.
Okay, Mayor,
That make sense?
what you will have, what you will have on the 20th is a map, a proposed zoning map. And we will keep coming back to you with different proposals as we look at different sections of the community. Okay, and so what we've done is we've taken north of Route 33 as the first area we want to look at, and any zones that straddle Route 33. And when we look at that, the master plan envisions two changes. One change is to consolidate certain areas into an ARE2 zone. There aren't many changes with respect to what the ARE2 calls for, except that what it now allows for is something called open lands planning, sort of a variation on clustering, where the planning board would be given the authority where it makes sense under a number of criteria to deviate from the ARE2, the 2-acre zoning requirement, if it makes sense to preserve very sensitive lands. But the applicant would be required to first come in with a standard subdivision plan under the standard zoning. And then, according to what the ordinance is going to call for, the planning board, at its discretion, following certain criteria, if it makes environmental sense, can bring those properties in somewhat, diminish the lot size in order to preserve contiguous environmental areas or farmland. It's also a farmland preservation initiative where you have very good soils, and it can be an economically viable farm if not all that land is developed as, lawns. So that's one thing you will be looking at. The other one, the HD3, that allows for the sort of age-restricted housing in a sort of a mixed-use village setting that has proximity to a highway, transportation, and an existing infrastructure. So those are two areas we saw on the zoning map when it was first presented. So the only changes on the zoning map will be those two. not further south, and we'll just amend as we go if you're satisfied with the language of the zoning ordinance. Now, now going to R1, before I decided on this approach, I thought I would take the easiest one. And the easiest one was the notion of eliminating ARE1 zoning and making it R1. And what the controversy last time on the zoning map was that there was an area around the Easy Street where an ARE1 was to become an R1. We've removed that from the map. So it's simply, there's only 2 sections of town, and technically the only thing that changes is it becomes a full acre. As opposed to 40,000 square feet, it becomes 43,650 square feet. That was recommended by the planning board. And we also eliminated the club issue, the swim pool club.
Right.
So there's really no use changes either. So that was sort of like an easy one, I thought.
Questions from the council?
Yeah, for the citizen, would you explain the difference between ARE and R1?
Well, this was a planning board concept. I really can't tell you in great detail. It was just a recommended change, and the only real technical one was that we increased the lot size to a full acre. That's really the only technical difference. The uses are the same in the draft that's going to be before the council.
Hold on, folks, please. There'll be plenty of time for public comment, which we welcome and appreciate, but that's not the time now.
Mr. Chinesky, the properties that I recall on Easy Street and those properties on Newton's Corner Road, which were slated to become R1 properties, they were all ARE2 properties.
Right. That was, Mr. Chernitsky just misspoke, that's all.
All right, so they're staying ARE2.
Yes, they're all staying the same.
Okay, so they're staying the way they are. We're not, because the changes, I kind of recall looking in the ordinance book, and some of the changes involved people who have horses and stuff on their property, required different setbacks and things that would have made it very, very onerous on a horse farmer or any type of farmer.
Right. The master plan reexamination makes a recommendation that ARE1 become R1.
Right.
And there's only 2 of those zones. And technically, the only difference is going to be an increase in a minor increase in a lot size.
Okay.
There's also issues with respect to homes, which exist for all other residential zones for victims of domestic violence and that sort of stuff. So it makes that uniform. It makes that uniform throughout the town.
Okay.
All right, so we're prepared to then we'll have this introduction and further discussion at the meeting advertised.
Yes.
Okay. All right, the next item we have is hearing of citizens. Before we do that, we're just going to take a quick 5-minute recess. We're going to come back and get right into hearing of citizens.
Let's go.
Okay, the last item for discussion tonight is public hearing. Just going to remind everyone that we have several people who'd like to speak this evening. If you'd come up and make your point to the council, we'll certainly take everyone's comments under advisement. First person is Mr. Abraham Magid. Welcome, Mr. Magid. Come on up.
Who is this from?
Don't need a cane, feel very All right. Yes, this is Abe Magid. I'm 89 Mariners Cove.
Welcome, Mr. Magid.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you. All right. Last meeting I was here was January 16th. I pointed out to you at that time an existing situation which is deplorable, serious, could lead to terrible consequences, and it specifically is.
Mr. Magid, would you just pull the mic a little closer, please?
Okay.
Oh, wow, sure.
Now to break it to you, Abe, nobody can hear you.
I'll start de novo for the sake of everybody else, besides being Abe Magid, 89 Mariners Cove. When I was here on January 16th, I told you of a very, very, very deplorable and potentially very dangerous, serious situation existing in Mariners Cove. That is the tail end. I repeated to you that way back in November of the 8th, when it rained one day heavy, it overflowed enough, not only to become 60, 80 feet wide, but it was even in Mariners Cove, not on the street, but there's a big depression there like a detention basin. I also told you at the beginning of January, in fact, the manager happened to come by, and one of my neighbors pointed out to him on one day's rain, and the manager said, "There's a lot of water." Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because when I was here last January 16th, I said I wanted to be informed of what you're doing about this thing. Now, I know right now it's very cold, but very changeable in the weather. As you know, we had an incredibly warm January. We have now frigid. And it could turn incredibly warm tomorrow. We're not going to talk about what nature's going to do. Certainly they couldn't in Florida. Well, they couldn't help that, okay? I guess, tornado came through. You can certainly help. I haven't heard from you a single thing back yet. And I'm speaking directly to you, Mr. Mayor, or to the Deputy Mayor, or to the council people. Nothing like that there. I told you as a minimum to get a permit from the DEP, Mr. Drabowski. I'll ask you right now, and then I want to continue. Has anybody done that? Has anybody gone and asked for that permit? Just tell me. Just that.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have the permit?
No.
You were turned down? You requested a permit. What happened? Mr. Drabowski said he'll be glad to give it to you. I can quote from the paper I gave you January 16th, Andrew Drabowski. Did you ask Andrew Drabowski for that permit?
It is in process. It has been requested.
Wait, you sent a request?
Mr. Chinesky, did you not send a note to Mr. Nunziato to begin this process?
What do you mean begin?
Good.
Ask for a permit. He said ask for a permit. Did you ask for a permit?
Keep giving us your comments, Mr.
No, I'm asking you now. I don't want to word process. You said yes to me. I asked you if you asked for a permit. You said yes. Did you ask for a permit? You have to go to the stream cleaning, get a stream cleaning permit. If you didn't, let me know. Let's not be nebulous about this thing. If you didn't ask for a permit, tell me now if you didn't ask for a permit. Will anybody tell me?
Mr. Chinesky,
Yeah,
I
Mayor,
believe the mayor addressed that when he said that the process had begun.
Right, Mayor,
What does the process mean?
Here, I'm just going to, what I don't want to do is take up the public's time. Mr.
Okay, no,
Mayor.
wait a minute.
So here's,
Okay. I don't want to hear the word process. What I'm saying is, did you, this is a very specific question. Besides the word process, did you request that Howell Township receive from either Mr. Andrew Drabowski or whoever is his boss, and there's a boss there over him, this permit, which Andrew Drabowski told me he would be glad to send you right away, and in fact, after you respond to it, if you don't hear from him within 10 days, it means you can go ahead. I'm coming right back to it, because I have a few other things to say since I'm on the clock here. I gather from what you said to me, specifically, that you have not asked for an application for a permit. Is that true? Will somebody tell me something?
I personally have not applied for anything.
No, I'm asking anybody here from the deputy mayor, the mayor, council people, the manager.
here's what we've done, Mr. Magid, very briefly. Manager directed the township engineer, we all got copies, to begin the process of requesting the permit. It is not as simple as, and I'm not going to debate it with you.
Okay, I'm not going to debate it. I hear you. It's not as simple.
It's not as simple
not as
as
simple. Okay.
sort of send them a memo and say, we'd like to get this.
No, don't have to elaborate. It's not simple.
It has started.
Okay.
Okay, what's your next point?
Please, there'll be a next one. You don't have to push me. Here we go. What I'm saying to you is this. If you don't yet have the permit, get it. Whatever the process is, move it along. If it went to the engineer, and if he can't move it along, have somebody who can move it along. For this reason, very specifically. Right now it's cold. It can get very warm tomorrow, but it'll more likely be very warm in a month or two. If we have even one day of heavy rain, it's not like some time before where it took 8 days, if you recall, and I showed you the pictures, for all these places where these trees are falling down. In other words, somebody has to get on the stick in a hurry, and I'll tell you why. I'll be very specific why. I heard tonight, we're all very human here, we're all very concerned if people get sick, and I certainly, that is the most important, totally. In the neighborhood where I am, there was a little bit of snow a few days ago, not the last one, the one before. Immediately, this is early in the morning, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. My neighbor Paul came running out, immediately wanted to give me a hand. Why? I can shovel it up. He wanted to give me a hand. Why? Fine people. He demonstrated great goodwill. A few years ago, when there was more snow, this same fellow, Frank De Silva, whose baby was just born, Owen Scott, came flying out. He's got one of these carts he rides around, didn't ask a word, boom, shoveling. All right, since I have now a phone number of a guy that can come out. What I'm saying, the neighbors are great, okay? We're talking about children as well as adults. We're not just talking about the damage to the house one way or another, or even great losses that can take place. I tell you, my daughter's house burnt down a year ago, December, in Homedale, and what she's so upset about is all the, the things that she lost that mean so much to her. What I'm saying, and again, it's a great neighborhood. I see the little kids growing up. There was a 3-year-old who always said, "Hi, Abe," with his little older sister, "Hi, Abe," and they're not going to school, so they're a little more mature maybe to say hi, Abe, but it's a great neighborhood. You have to see to it that before, let's not talk about the horses out of the stable. I'm sorry, there were too many technical things and we couldn't get it done. Get it done. I hear C-SPAN all day long how the American government, between Senate and the House of Representatives, can't get things done in there. Big thing. This is a small thing. You can get it done. But the human interest factor is there. And I can't impress on you enough. Now, since I asked to be informed if any procedures were taking place, now I find out tonight procedures were taking place. So I'm going to ask you, Mr. Deputy Mayor or Mayor, to tell this manager now, because I wasn't informed that you already did a certain step. Will you get the concurrence that I will be called every step along the way, and I mean the next few weeks, not the next few months, to see to it that this action, if there's any kind of bottleneck, not just procedures along, that it stops immediately. And from what I heard from Mr. Jambowski, there's no bottleneck if it's filed the right way. Or they'll tell you within 10 days it's wrong. If you file it the right way, it'll fly through. Now I want to ask you the blushing bride question. If you get that permit, are you then, without procedure, ready, whatever means it is, wherever you're allowed to go ahead and get those giant trees out, and you have all the maps from me at points A, B, C, and D, not even counting E where it goes on the Burgerville Road. Or have you at least investigated, do a little proactive work to find out what you have to do, and let me know that if you're doing it. And if you're not doing it, why aren't you even in advance of getting the permit? And I want some answers now. No, don't just, the last meeting, my neighbors are terribly shocked after I spoke. It's just like a stone wall. They heard me and they walked away. You got very upset neighbors. Just the fact that they're not doing what you are supposed to be responsible to do. Now I'm asking you those questions. What are your intentions?
I told you I'd put my waders on and get a shovel for
How's
the
that
first
again?
time in 20 years and help.
Okay, wait. Humor's wonderful. I love humor. This is not time for humor. What I want to know is, what would you do to see to it in advance, before we even get the permit, of what it takes so that when you get the permit, gung-ho, you can do it? I want to know. Have you done anything about researching that, finding out? Do you intend to do it? I want some answers now, right now. No, I won't do it. No, don't lead me down the primrose path.
I don't leave down the
Good.
primrose path.
If it starts getting very warm, the end of February, and we start flooding, and I haven't even heard, not only you didn't get a permit, but you haven't even found out how to go about it. Do you even know how to go about it? I want to know.
I don't know how to go about it.
Oh, you don't know? Mr. Mayor, do you know? Well, how about finding out?
I think in fairness, Mr. Maggot, and I don't want to...
I want some fairness. I've been waiting for months before this flood hits.
Mr. Maggot, if you ask the mayor a question, he starts to answer.
Go ahead, I will listen.
Appreciate it if you'd
You
listen.
damn right I will. Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. Fine. Thank you. Or you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, if you want to answer me, I'll absolutely listen.
I think what we've tried to do, without belaboring the issue, is demonstrate this council, in particular, my three colleagues and Mrs. Showmaker, the former council, Mr. Malave, Mr. Tabasco, a concern about doing whatever was appropriate and whatever was in our jurisdiction to do. We have submitted to the engineer's office a request from the manager to get the permit. That's step number one. I think in fairness, as you can appreciate, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the council, but our manager has probably, and you're not going to like this, but it's the truth, probably 60 or 70 just as pressing, just as compelling issues where lives are at stake, where safety and health and welfare are at stake. And we have an obligation to try and prioritize for his office those things that require immediate attention versus those things that may require a longer-term approach. What you're asking us to do is certainly justified, but will require the township to incur taxpayer expenses, to go onto private property, and to repair or remediate the trees, the brush, what have you, that cause this problem. And so it's a policy issue, quite frankly, that the council has to deliberate and make a decision on whether or not it is appropriate to use taxpayer funds to clean, repair, or remediate what is private property. It's a fair request in light of what's happened to the people who live in your community. I think step number one is to allow that process to go through, and the council will have to decide what they want to do in its collective judgment about having Mr. Chernetsky put Plan B together in anticipation of a potential approval by the appropriate authorities. I think we do have, quite frankly, a little bit of time. You're not going to like to hear that either, but I'm going to be candid with you because of the temperatures and the climate that exists right now. And so we need to allow our manager to have that process go through its course. It's certainly your prerogative to ask the council to reprioritize for him, to put this more toward the top of the list, if you will, and maybe that's what the council will decide to do. But I think in fairness, we have to take advantage of the climate we have right now with respect to temperature and nature, and allow him to work on those things that need attention right now. And I can appreciate you don't like that response, but sometimes we have to be candid and not mislead people and set false expectations. So the policy issue for the council is, do we want to appropriate township employees, taxpayer money to go into private property, fix this issue? And if we do that, what you have to appreciate is what precedent does that create for other areas throughout the community, and it's a big town, as you know, to similarly come back and say, well, what about my area? And what about my problem? And so it's a real predicament that requires thoughtful policy analysis. And I don't believe that we're in a position to give you an explanation tonight about what the commitment of the council is going to be.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And you said to me, you're going to say some things that I might not like. I don't mind that it's cold weather, and I told you that. Now I'm going to say something, a little bit to you that you're not going to like. You're not going to like to hear the need and the dire need of these people, even though you have 60. You have given me no answer whatsoever in terms of how quickly this will be done. You're not going to like that I'm repeating back to you, that you're giving me language, prioritize, policy, taxpayer money. We might have to, as a precedent, do for other things. I say, as a group, this is a very shameful response to a dire need, and should it arise that what takes place, not after the first, second, or third day of terrible flooding, and remember, all of this is recapitulative, you totally took no action even to find out, exploratory, what's involved in doing something like that. And therefore, I'm ashamed of the mayor, the deputy mayor, and the council, because you're definitely not considering the dire needs. I'm not talking the rest of the world or the other 60 of what's going on in Mariners Cove. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Magid. Mrs. Dixell, welcome. Come on up. Hello, Mrs. Dixell.
I'm not firing on all jets.
Good evening. If you'd just, of course, introduce yourself, and perhaps you can give us a sense of what you'd like to talk about.
Hang on. Hold the phone. Barbara Dixell, The Villages. I'm going to start off by saying the first thing on my agenda was before I left my house tonight, I heard that the property tax relief was passed. I'm going to thank Senator Singer publicly for crossing over with three Republican senators crossed over to sign the bill. Bless him. The property tax relief is passed.
That's great.
So that's one thing I will be sending Senator Singer tomorrow morning and thanking him for doing that, because he does have a big community and a big area of his constituents that have lots of homeowners who are in dire need of property relief. Okay, lots of stuff. Jersey American Water was in my house this morning, as well as 3 other villages' houses. Regarding a meeting we had in the manager's office, we're all still complaining about water we can't drink. Still buying bottled water. They took water samples. So what they did was they ran everybody's water for 15 minutes, and then they took the sample. I was livid nuts, because if you're going to run the water faucet for 15 minutes and then take the water sample, you're going to get pretty good water out of the spigot. You're going to get pretty decent tasting water. If you turn the water faucet on and you get the crap that we drink every day, then it's not going to be so wonderful. It's not going to be tasting so wonderful. So I asked them to sign a letter in my house that they were there and they tested the water and they ran it for 10 minutes, which I gave a copy to the manager's office. And I also called Robert Brabston, their corporate counsel, and I let him have holy hell. You know, I said, I'm sorry, I said, if Barbara Dixell hadn't tested her water, the only person in Howell Township to spend $525 to test her water, because you can't drink it, to find out that you got high trihalomethanes of chloroform, bromodichloromethane, and dibromochloromethane, that is 71.47 out of the 80 by the DEP. Nobody in this town would know it. Nobody.
Barbara, in fairness, all water tests, the standard requirement is that the water has to be run to get the stale water out of the house. Trihalomethanes are not going to grow.
Well, it still tasted pretty bad. It still tasted wonderful.
I agree with you. I'm just telling you that's a standard.
But
Even on a private well test, that the water must be run for a set period of time.
Okay, and then I said, and what about the aeration that you're planning to put in the, he says, well, we're going to have to come back and hit you with another raise. I said, oh, wow, it's wonderful. You just got us for the 23%. And we're supposed to not get that, because we're supposed to get that in this decision, but according to them, they gave it to us in 2003, 2004. So now they're going to talk about if they put the aeration filter system in the Manasquan, they're going to come back for another raise. Why not? Stick it to the township some more. Okay, I went, as I met Bill Nunziata there, I went to the public meeting at Freehold Township Municipal Building with regard to Rutgers and the Rutgers Field and the realigning Edinburgh. Okay, and I did give Councilwoman Schomacher a copy, because she had addressed it publicly at the council here, and I did tell her that I did address this. And they will be taking about 4 acres off the existing farm. They're going to realign it with Edinburgh, and the light will move over. And according to the original 1996 traffic plan of Adelphia Greens, they have to close Spyglass. Because that according to that, and I have the developer's agreement, I just got to find it. They're supposed to close Spyglass, and Edinburgh will be the only in-out through the development. My only problem with that is it's going to be a county road, and they're going to allow big trucks, trailer trucks. That's a community. I would hope that this council at one point would take some kind of action to limit the size of trailer trucks and God knows what rumbling through Adelphia Greens.
Mr. Bongiovanni, could we do that on a county road?
I don't think we have the jurisdiction. I don't think so.
Okay, and one of the major concerns that Mrs. Schumacher had was that coming around, there's a blind spot in County Road 524. Coming from Surrey Downs, going straight on toward Route 9 on
Like
County
going
Road.
east to west.
I don't know, east, west, north, and
heading
south.
west.
Coming from Surrey Downs toward 9. Okay, when you're coming, you can't see the traffic light, and you can't see around the curve in the farm, so that when you come upon that, and there's a red light, you're jamming on the brakes, and you don't want rear-end collisions.
True.
So what I did was, I think they may have moved that traffic light sign, but I did request that they put a blinking light, some kind of blinking light, traffic light ahead, further toward this end of County Road 524. So I just want to make you aware of all of this. If you want, I'll copy, but Cynthia Showmaker had a copy of this. Also, my opinion personally, there's 3 plans. The alternate one I don't think alternate traffic plan 1 is no big deal. Alternate 2 I feel is the best plan because it's like, alternate 2, it's like a lazy S. It won't be a speedway, it's like a lazy S, and the traffic can get around the lazy S all right. Alternate 3 is a straight route, and I said to them at that meeting, I said, you have another Kozlowski Road and the possibility of killing more kids on a speedway. It's one straight road. They're better off with this lazy S type thing, which may slow the traffic down a little bit. So that's my personal take on this. Again, like I said, they need to close Spyglass because they can't have all these roads going in and out of this development, and these poor homeowners are going to be locked in their houses. Okay, more stuff. The water company samples, okay, I need to ask you about Councilman Malone, Assemblyman Malone, what can he do for the villages with regard to our water problems? We have, our big water bills, could we pay on consumption, our sewer bills, our water, but we're, I pay approximately, I'm sure most of the villages pay, $250 or more a quarter. Okay, that's a lot. Water, sewer, combined, 200, that's, because it's based on consumption. So, I'm about 200.
You don't have a flat sewer rate
No,
in the
I don't think
villages?
so, but whatever it is, my water bills are never the same. It's like 200,
Barbara, I'm just looking at the deputy manager, you do have a flat rate.
whatever it is, my bills are usually 250, 230 a quarter is a lot of money.
Okay, but you
A lot of
have
money.
the same flat rate as the rest of the town.
We don't get 2 water bills, we don't get 2 bills. Most people get 2 bills in this town, we don't. And
the water use that comes out of the main.
They're adult, I think they are adult, yeah.
Okay.
All right, we'll look into that.
please, look into that.
Could you bring us in a bill from
Yeah,
the village? I'd really like to see it.
Barb, you can fax it to me
I'll
tomorrow.
collect, I did that study, did I give you a copy of that study I did the day we had the meeting of people's water bills that I took for the quarter?
You know what? And now that you're saying it, I believe it's upstairs in the file. Let me
Because
look, I'll call you in the morning.
I did, yeah, I did it in
Okay.
color. Okay, about, villages, okay, the villages Cablevision, Channel 77. I do believe, it's my personal opinion, that it be a law, that people have access to, public service TV, and Channel 77 is, it's an information access channel, and I do believe that every citizen in this town should have access to what goes on in this council chamber. And it's not fair that we can't get this. whether we have Cablevision, or we have Grandview Cable, or we have Dish Network. I just feel it's highly irregular, and it should be a law that we are entitled to have access to the information that comes out of our governing body and these council chambers.
All right, I think the problem with that would be that we would be requiring, for a better term, franchise jumping. We can't tell Cablevision to jump Grandview's franchise, and we can't require.
Somebody work together with them to try and
We can ask.
broker a deal?
We can ask, but we
Here's
can't
the
demand.
update. Our franchise agreement is coming to expiration, and in fact, through the manager's office, a group is beginning to work on new things that we'd like to have in the next agreement, if you will. And one of the things that has came up a few times last year, there are residents who live in Howell Township with a Farmingdale address, notably the people who live around the Asbury Avenue part of the community, Cranberry Road part of the community. They also don't get Channel 77. So this is an issue that in certain pockets,
We
people
don't get it. We don't get it.
Villages, et cetera. So what we have to do, to Councilman Howell's point, is we have a contract that defines a certain franchise and distribution area, and when the agreement comes up for expiration, I'm sure that we're going to look to include all provisions of Howell Township as one of the many things we're going to be asking for. Is that right, Mr. Janeski?
That's right.
Good.
Frankly, though, Mayor, there are some areas that residents should be receiving Channel 77 and they're not.
Okay.
Which indicates to us, too, that our community's not getting the benefit of the franchise fee. And after numerous correspondence from my office to the BPU, asking them to look at this, frankly, I think our next step may be for council to consider referring this to for legal action. Never mind the law, just implementing what's currently in place. But that's just as general as I want to get now. But we are reaching a frustration point in getting them to.
Who are we having our issues with there?
A number of carriers, but there's neighborhoods in the town that I believe should be getting Channel 77 under our franchise agreement, and they're not.
Okay.
Well, considering that the Villages has a lot of very elderly seniors who are shut in, who don't drive, who don't get out, who really need to have some type of information as to what's happening in the town they live in. And Mr. Kleeman just said, if you heard him, that Grandview Cable will give it to us if Cablevision will allow it.
Those are things we're going to have to discuss with Cablevision during the next round of contract talk. So I
Yeah, I
don't
mean,
believe
that's
it's
really,
a good
you
idea
know-
to address them here in the
Could
open.
we see something with the contracts?
It's
Do
a, it's
you
a,
mind if
it's
I
a,
have a copy?
yeah,
I'd like to review them, discuss them maybe?
yeah. Yeah, we will discuss that in closed session.
In closed session, huh?
Yeah, because I think it may be heading down that road.
I'm just playing with you.
Okay, with regard to the reval, just so that you know, the town of Long Branch has the same assessment company that we have. They're livid, they're after them, because they're saying that a house that was purchased at $120,000 8 years ago was assessed at $218,000 in 2003, and now valued at $751,000. And that's sticker shock. Especially all of us in the Villages as well, we also just got sticker shock. Our houses are not selling in the Villages for what they've assessed us at. And just so that you know, and I'm going to ask you to look into the unfair, full market value, profit-making company that this is, okay? Long Branch is going after them. I think you might be wise to do the same for the benefit and the welfare of the citizens of Howell Township. If my house, they're telling me the property my house sits on is $105,000. If I have 5 houses attached to me, and I don't know what consists of an acre there, but if I got 5 houses and all of these are approximately $105,000, then I can really think to say that they're valuing the Village's property at $500,000 an acre? If they're putting 5 houses together, now that's outrageous, that's asinine. I mean, you can't tell me that $500,000 an acre is normal.
Can I ask you how would you say that is out of the question?
Why isn't it out of the question?
If a builder right now, and I'm just saying this to you, knowing real estate, owning a mortgage company, If you told the builder right now that I could build 5 units to the acre, they'd pay $500,000 for the property. They would.
We don't own the land. We don't own the roof. We own the inside of our house. We keep telling people that. They don't want to hear it. So, like I said, we have just gotten sticker shock. Now, just so that you know, also, I'm going to tell you something else. I was asked by a owner of a home in the Villages to deliver a letter to the tax assessor, which I did, in a sealed envelope. The homeowner had a very high assessment. The homeowner said the homeowner couldn't afford the assessment and was deep concerned about it. The next day, the homeowner got a letter from Mr. Lenahan raising the assessment $4,000 more. What the hell for? Why can't they leave well enough alone, be fair? I mean, I have heard people in the Villages, and I have been told for years, and I've been saying it since the first water company fight we had in 1999, that people can't eat, they can't pay their bills, they can't pay for medicine, they have to choose between eating and paying for medicine, or paying the monthly fee. Well, now what are we going to do? We're going to have to now add $100 a month for taxes, and better. Why would the tax assessor of Howell Township, and not even your reval company, send this homeowner a letter a day later raising the assessment $4,000 when the homeowner asked me to deliver a letter to the guy saying that the homeowner was having a problem? I think that's a goddamn outrage. And I think this town ought to be very embarrassed. And I think the homeowner's original assessment ought to be reinstated. No comment, right?
I think, Mrs. Dixell, all we can tell you without having the detail is that this was brought to the council's attention tonight, and we've asked that the manager look into it based on the very valid observation you've just made. We're not in a position to comment on the facts because we don't have them all.
I gasped when the homeowner called me. I left a message.
Mrs. Dixell, it's being looked into
Mr. Schlegel's
so that the manager and the
having
assessor will get to the
major
bottom of it.
surgery that day, coming home from the hospital, having major cancer surgery, coming home from the hospital and screaming like a raving maniac because the homeowner called me in tears. And I says, what the goddamn hell is going on in this town?
Mrs. Dixell,
Now, I'm just telling you, I'm not altogether well right now, but I'm not, even as the county committee woman, going to stand for any resident that I represent that duly elected me to this office, and I swore an oath to uphold, duly elected me to this office to have that homeowner ask me to deliver a letter to the tax assessor and then have the homeowner's assessment raised $4,000 the next day. I'm not putting up with that. I'll tell you that right now. Okay. One more thing. Mr. Dalton, I'm going to address this to you. When you ran for public office, you stated at a public meeting once that all public comment at workshop meetings should be brought before the council does the workshop meeting and votes on the consent agenda. And you did say that in an open meeting when you were running for office. Therefore, I am going to make a citizen's motion from the floor, which I will ask for a second right now and a council vote, to change the order of business on workshop meetings to say now that all consent agenda items at workshop meetings are to be discussed and the public given a chance to comment on it before they are voted on. So can I please have, Mrs. Dalton, can you please give a second on that motion, since you're the one who said that publicly when you were running for public office? And can I now have a vote of the council?
Unfortunately, Mrs. Dixell, under our rules of order, specifically Robert's rules, the parliamentary procedure does not allow the assembly, if you will, to make a motion and ask the council to take action.
Well, then I'm asking you to
So-
make the motion, and I'm asking you to do that before I leave this dais.
So if I may finish, what would need to happen is that a member of the council would need to introduce a motion, if you will, to what you described, and then it could be seconded and there could be debate. However, and I'll give Mrs. Dalton the floor certainly, but this is not the time of our meeting to talk about what you've suggested. This is the public portion.
This is a public
So
comment.
we're going to listen to all of the public's comments and input. Perhaps at another workshop meeting, the council may wish to engage on what you've described from a policy perspective, but we're not going to do it during the public hearing. Mrs. Dalton, do you want to, I'll give you the floor to make any comments. ma'am.
Mrs. Dixell, I'll just respond that your comment is definitely well taken. This is my second formal council meeting, in looking at the agenda and the things that have been added on to it and some details, have some concerns and comments and constructive thoughts on it. This evening, you raised the issue early on, and public comment was solicited on the
Because
consent
I did
agenda.
fax that to the manager's office very early on today.
And all I can tell you is that it will be appropriately raised at a very future meeting.
At a near meeting, I will continue to harp on this because you said this publicly when you were running for public
And I
office.
agree wholeheartedly,
that-
Barbara.
That the agenda must change, and that public comment, all public comment must be held before the governing body votes on before the governing body votes on anything that's going to bind the citizens of Howell Township to any ordinance, any bond, anything, that the public has a right to comment and that needs to change.
Mrs. Dixell, I think the councilwoman gave you a very eloquent response to your inquiry, and I'm certain it'll be acted upon in short order. What else do you have for us?
I know, like I said, I just, pretty much, but I want you to check into this reval company. This is from Long Branch, I'll leave it with you. This is from Long Branch?
We all
You've seen it?
all
You've
have
seen
it. We've all got it.
Okay, well then, you know
all
what?
have
Then
a
you
copy.
all need to get together in a closed session, in exec, and go after them, okay? Because we've gotten sticker shock. This is a full-profit, money-making company. Long Branch has said it. I'm going to say the same thing, and it's not fair. And like I said, I represent the county committee woman with my husband, who's the county committee man for the villages. And let me tell you something. Well, sick, anything, hospital. I'm there day and night for these people. They know it. And I hope the Township of Howell knows it also.
Thank you, Mrs. Dixell.
Thank you.
Mr. Brannan, welcome, sir. Come on up.
Hope you feel better, Barbara.
I got to go back and do it again. They didn't get my margins right.
Good evening, Mr. Brannan. Welcome, sir. How can we help you?
Good evening, Jack Brannan, 16 Woodland Drive. Really just, maybe you can answer a question for me. Going back to 8A3, where they want to put the bus stop by North Woods. How are those locations picked?
Mr. Janetzky, you want to comment, please?
We receive a letter from New Jersey Transit. They do a study, and they only move forward if the council adopts the appropriate legislation. But the township doesn't pick them, New Jersey Transit does. At times, though, however, we've requested them, and then they'll study the request.
Well, the only reason I read through was posted on the board out front, and they're saying it's 100 feet due north, northbound side of Northwoods Place. And I went on the internet and I just printed off this map. In fact, you can have it if you'd like. But if you look at that intersection, where they want to put it, to me, poses more of a safety issue for whoever's getting off the bus.
It's the ramp on 195.
It's right there. It's right where the acceleration ramp and the jug handle ramp for Northwoods Place to Stanley Boulevard is. I can't see why they won't want to put it at that location. I mean, if you look at where the other bus drops or stops are, they're by park and rides primarily. There really isn't that many areas to park here. In fact, the town 2 years ago posted, because of the park and ride situation where our neighborhood is to the park and ride by Aldrich Road, people were using our street as a parking location and walking down there, posted no parking signs Monday through Friday between 7, I think it's 7 to 9, or 7 to 5. So I'm just questioning
All right,
where that came up from.
Mr. Chudzinski, in light of Mr. Brannan's observation, we're not obviously going to act on this potentially until the 20th. Can you or a delegate on your behalf make an inquiry into New Jersey Transit? Just sort of further this point a little bit, as Mr. Brannan has talked about. Let's get their explanation so that when we prepare to take action on the 20th, we'll be better informed as
Right,
to their
I'm just
selection.
looking at, it could be
Okay.
a safety issue, that's all.
Great, thanks for
Where
your
it's going to be. And the second question was, or really a comment, I came here to have an explanation done about the reval. I found the people here to be very professional when they came in.
Good.
I know certain people here apparently didn't. The comment that I want to make is, there were errors on the assessment. They were in my house, and they made a number of errors, and I pointed them out. And so if they come in your house and you have that many errors listed, and I questioned where they came up with their figures. Our neighborhood, the lots are all the same. They're 100 by 150. The houses vary slightly in size. A couple houses that actually were larger square footage than mine got assessed less than mine. And that's what I posed the question to them. And they're making adjustments, but how did they come up with their basis when they have a neighborhood that has multiple homes that are very similar? And how can they base a house that's smaller at a higher assessed value? Because you're supposed to look at square footage, bedrooms, bathrooms, and everything else. I don't know where their logic was with some of this. And I just want to point that out. I mean, they're making the appropriate adjustments, but if an average citizen doesn't come in and questions this, I mean, there was a number of errors made on mine. So that's all. Just want to bring it to your attention.
Okay.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Brennan.
Thank you, Jack.
Mrs. Smith, welcome. Come on up. Mrs. Smith, it says you'd like to also talk about the reevaluation. Is that right? Okay.
Please.
All right, sure. If you just
You
introduce
notice I'm
yourself
sitting?
again.
That means I gotta really get into it.
Okay.
Rest that knee.
I'm not used to sitting down with this thing. Pauline Smith, 54 Vanderveer Road. I found a lot of problems. The whole meeting process was an education. I was really glad that I came. I didn't think not to come because last time I found several errors that were corrected. It was very simple. But I want to complain about the whole process. And I'm sorry, I believe that we have such a serious problem with the way our properties were valued that I think you really have to stop and take a close look and do what anything can be done to recalculate the value of the land. Howell Township is not, well, I'm not going to go into it until I ask. Do each of you understand how they calculated the land, or what I understand the way they calculated it? Could you please tell me how it was calculated?
It depends on who you spoke to, maybe.
Deputy Mayor, you would
Yeah,
chair the meeting at this point.
Yeah, Mr. Bongiovanni, I just want to be clear before we do this.
Well, I don't think
Is this something that we're really not allowed to discuss?
I really don't think the council should be discussing it because, first of all, they have to accept or eventually accept the figures from the tax assessors, the number that he puts on the property value, and then make a decision whether or not, in the face of a possible property tax appeal, whether or not they stand by it. Hold on, just for a second. And so what their thought processes are about it are really something that might be used in like a court litigation. You know, they were thinking this, so they don't understand that. So I'd rather that, for one thing, it's really more important what the processes of whether or not the township assessor understands land values rather than the council people. And I did property tax appeals for 7 years, and I know it's a difficult subject, but they can evaluate it in several different ways. You know, they could evaluate land based on, just as if they take a piece of improved property and they get the market value for it, and then they say, well, how much would it cost to replace the building? And they could sort of subtract that amount from the market, and they come up with the land value. That's one way of doing it. So when you start, the confusing thing is when you start trying to compare, say in your area, a 5-acre parcel with a house on it, and it says the land value is being $600,000, and then you go another 5-acre parcel, and it says the land value $400,000, and people start comparing the land to the land, when actually you have to look at the whole property compared to the other property. So it's a really complex issue, and I think you've seen here that when they're finding a mistake in fact, they're going to correct those facts pretty quickly. But when you get problems as over questions of valuation, and in those cases, it may be only the experts who are able to really assist in making those accurate evaluations.
I'm here to tell you, and I want you all to know this. I'm telling you firsthand from myself, secondhand from people that if you haven't heard from them, I'll gladly tell them to call you or email you or whatever, that's not the case here. They will not listen to any discussion about the value of the land. It is what it is, and that's all they want to hear. That's wrong.
I just want to comment about something with it. I mean, I know it's hard for a lot of people to sink into them and believe it, but I was doing mortgages on purchases over in Freewood Acres section of town for $60,000, $70,000 purchases 7-8 years ago. And then 2 years ago, I was doing people that were buying them and tearing them down for $200,000. A lot of people don't want to believe that a lot in Howell Township costs you a minimum of $200,000 right now for a building lot, a raw piece of land. I know people who would line up to buy lots if they were $125,000 in Howell Township. They'd be gone in 2 weeks.
Do you realize the consequences of the valuation of the land? Do you realize the houses, the people that are going to go bankrupt, the people that are only going to sell and go God knows where, give up their ancestral homes, or just the homes that they've spent their whole lives in, or choose to live out their lives because of the taxes? I'll use ours as an example. And I'm not here just to complain about me. I'm talking about people I've heard from over and over and over again about this company. I'll use the one issue. Mr. Rubenstein, and I heard him and you can check the record, gave a report before this council at the last public meeting. He stated that the average increase was 2.3. I know.
2.3 times.
Right, that's
Right.
exactly what I mean.
230%.
I'm sorry, I left off the word. Bad habit I have, I'll admit to that, but it's 2.3 times, not 2.3%.
Right.
2.3 times. Okay. The people who are having the meetings that work for this company are telling people variously 2.5, 2.7, I've heard 2.9. Well, actually, our little house was increased 3.7 with no good explanation. And to tell you what that means to us, our taxes, and oh, by the way, they're stating as fact. I was told that the published $1.90 for municipal tax was going to, you told the company that it was going to come in for less than that. You haven't even had your budget meetings yet. You haven't not only not voted on it, but decided to discuss it, and I don't think you told the company anything.
That's an absolute accurate statement. I believe they told us it was going to be even lower than that when they were here at the last meeting. They said it was 182.
And I personally I'm not a happy camper that I was ever put in a letter, but that was not my choice. Had nothing to do with me, and I directed them to put nothing.
And that would have been the right thing to do. Now, if I want to go on with my scenario and how it impacts us, this raise in our valuation will increase our taxes almost double at the $1.90. So that means on a 4-room house, on a little country lot, we'll be paying approximately $7,000. Okay. What happens if the same thing happened that happened with the last round? 2 years later, it was over $4. I know, I was on that council that had to do it, so I know. It was over $4, it was over double. So that means we'll be paying $14,000 for a 4-room house with 1 bathroom, and it's 60-some years old.
You doubled the taxes in 4 years, Mrs. Smith?
No, we doubled the taxes. It was necessary, believe me. Sometime I'll tell you the history.
Did they reelect you?
You know what? They didn't reelect me, but that's not why. And somebody else can tell you about those lies.
Nobody's happy about the reevaluation.
But they should be accurate. It should be fair. It should be equitable. The gentleman, and I use the term loosely because he was not impolite, but he lied, I don't know how many times, made statements to us that he should not have made. He shouldn't have said things like, we haven't been paying our fair share of taxes all these years. Got news for him. We pay more than our fair share because we don't require any extra services. Just leave us alone, fix the roads, and we'll help pay for the police department and the necessary statutory requirements, our share, and we don't demand anything extra. And there are a lot of people like us. Now, we'll be okay because we know how to live conservatively. We'll probably have to give up the boat, and that's not fair to His Majesty Captain Don Smith. But to pay our taxes, we'll have to do that. But how many people have that asset and have that in their budget that they can spend? Now, when I talk about the fair and equitable, and it might not be correct, and that's why I asked you if you knew how this was calculated. And I can understand and appreciate the advice of Mr. Bongiovanni. But I can tell you, from having been through this several times around, very common sense. Howell Township, as we all know, is a very large municipality. Diversified lifestyles, different areas, from the north, very rich soils, to the south, where you've got pinelands and south. We're on the, and salt. Sand. Sorry about that, Mike. Okay. Now, it is so different. And not all land is 100% buildable. Now, according to the person who had the meeting with us, it was basically all averaged out. And he said that there were no large properties sold, just acreage or with larger acreage. So it had to be all sales. And when I asked the question about what formula, how they came about the price for it, he went into selling houses. And I interrupted him. I thought he didn't understand my question. And he said, well, if you let me finish, I'll tell you how we calculated it.
I certainly know how that goes.
Yes, I know. I knew you'd do that. When I planned on saying that, I knew you'd do that. But I only was asking for a clarification whether he was talking about land values or houses, because he talked about the sale of houses. That should have nothing to do with it. And as far as properties, land,
I'm a little bit miffed at that the sale of houses should have nothing to do with valuation.
No, I'm sorry, that's a shortcut. That's part of the valuation. But if you listen to me finish, you'll understand where I'm going. If you look at the applications before both boards and the list of applications facing both boards, there must have been some property change hands somewhere. Think of that rationale. People, they're contract purchasers with development proposals, okay? So the property has to change hands, so they should be calculating that too, not just houses that are already, properties that are already built with houses on them. And there was an opinion a few years ago, and Mr. Bongiovanni could probably explain it better than I. But I remember when it came down, and it basically was defense, we used it as defense several times in our decisions on the planning board. And it basically says that you are not guaranteed the most expensive, or what you might consider the best equity in your property, as long as you have use of it. Does that explain it well enough? Right. So why should we, that come under consideration to a piece of property, compare the property with a large $1 million houses, three-quarters of $1 million house, the new ones that were sold, and the equity in them, to a piece of property like ours that we're very happy with, and we use it very well, and I'm using ours because there are a lot of them like it in Howell Township. But we have a nice flat frontage, 200 feet, with a little house on it. But when you go down the hill, it's wet. It's not buildable. We couldn't build anything on it. Why should we be taxed for being able to build something on it? They have always taken that into consideration. From the time that we subdivided that little piece of property off of the Vanderveer farm, we have always been taxed accordingly. Why is this company taxing us as though you could build on all or both acres and portion of the third acre? Shouldn't that be in the records that they should look at? That property doesn't change. All of a sudden, it's buildable now, when it hasn't been buildable for 38 years we've owned it, 5 years we rented it.
Are you saying to me that they're assessing your property as if it's 2 building lots?
No, I'm saying that it's as though it was all buildable. I used I made the comment that it was not subdividable because it's a 2-acre zone and it's just a little over 2 acres, well, 2.5 acres approximately. And that's the impression I'm getting from him, from what the person, I can only go by the person that we had the meeting with.
So if they're assessing you as 1 building lot,
Right.
1 buildable lot, they're not assessing you as 2.
I don't think so, no.
Okay.
No, but they're assessing it as though you could build anything anywhere. Do you understand what I mean?
I understand what you mean.
And why, and there's a lady, I think she's still back in the public, who has a few acres on Bennett Road, a little cottage about the same as, and I think she put her name down to speak. If she still does at this hour, I don't know. But she has a little cottage. It's a lovely little cottage, right, close to the road, and it's about the size of ours. But I think it's a little, ours is just plain square. Hers is prettier. But she's assessed the same way, and more than half of her land is bona fide wetlands. Not just wet land, but bona fide wetlands. Maybe they're not doing the job completely. When these are established lots that have been around, those houses have been on Bennett Road for some of them 100 years. Why have they, are they being negligent? Are they just plain trying to come up with a higher value? They're not accurate. I asked for go ahead, you were going to say something.
Are you under the assumption that if it's only 1 building lot and it's 2.5 acres, but only 1 1/4 could be built on, that it should be half the value?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm saying, the way it was done before, and I'm sorry, I don't remember his name, when we initially subdivided off the corner of Mr. and Mrs. Vanderveer's farm, the assessor that we had at the time looked at it, and it was established that approximately an acre, like the higher part, was built on a ridge line, and then it goes straight down in the back. That is, that more or less level part, that to the eye is approximately an acre. That's one value. The rest of it is very much less. And that hasn't been done this time. And I don't think they did it with Mrs. Liebehens's property by the sound of it either, and several other people who have called and talked to me about it.
Mrs. Smith, can I just, all the points you're making, I think we all agree with, and we all share in this one together because we're all taxpayers.
Right, exactly.
I might just ask, just your indulgence, because we do have some folks that I've never seen come here before, and the hour is getting late, that really do want to talk about the reevaluation as well.
Mr. Magnin spoke for 17 minutes. Mrs. Dixell spoke for 22. I don't want to take extra time, but I do have a few more. If you want, I know I'm wordy. If you want me to go on to the next part of it, I do have other things to discuss about the reval.
Why don't you do that, please?
But do you understand where I'm coming from? It's my understanding that the reason the law that requires the revaluation of property is to make things equitable. This isn't equitable. It's just raising everything up. Now, Mrs. Dixell referred to this article, and I'd like just to read this comment that I know you've read, but I'd like to, it makes an excellent point. It's 2 small paragraphs. The fair market value explanation. Donald M. Oliver, director of the Kislak Real Estate Institute at Monmouth University, said fair market value means the most probable price a property would fetch in a competitive market under all conditions requisite to a fair sale. That means the house has to have had reasonable time on the market, and the sale is not forced by a divorce or a bankruptcy or the fact that someone is being forced to relocate because of work and has 10 days to vacate. In other words, in Mr. Walsh's opinion, any property, there'd be people lining up to grab the property and tear the house down. But is that good for the community? Is that the right thing to do? And should we permit it? And that's why we should have the ordinance that restricts such things, so that enormous houses are not built on tiny lots, the way they are in Oceanport and other places. That aside, I would like to relate to you very quickly. There's a lady who lives in Adelphia who's housebound and asked me to check her, whatever you say it, card, the information they had to make sure they were right. Her assessment went from approximately $75,000 to $225,000. The house would blow over in a small wind. I think the only reason it stays up is because it has the woods around it. She has approximately a quarter of an acre of land. The house is well over 100 years old. I would say 150 to 200 years old. And I know how they're built because I was raised in one of those houses. There's not a foundation. The floor is built, lays right on the ground, and they have stone walls, inner walls, and it somehow holds them up. But if they come off that stone, look out. This house, nobody's going to buy this for a house, and nobody's going to buy that tiny lot on a one-lane road. I don't mean one each way. One-lane road, you have to pull off for the people to go the other way, is in much need of repair, and because the people constantly complain. She hasn't had any maintenance in approximately 50 years. And her valuation is $225,000. And the person conducting our meeting made the comment about both hers and our property that we hadn't been paying our fair share of taxes. Now, that's wrong. He also, when we weren't getting anywhere, he also tried to make other suggestions to direct us to how we could ease our payment of paying our fair share. He just wanted to get rid of us, and it only angered me. So correcting a problem is what I want to do. I do not want to just have our assessment lowered. I want all the problems corrected, and if they are not, you're going to have an awful lot of appeals. And that's not going to be good for what the township looks like. It's going to make money for the lawyers,
and it's going to cost we taxpayers from both sides, because we'll be paying to fight us and to defend us. And I think you can avoid that if you go back to this outfit and tell them to look at existing assessments and why and how the land is calculated. Not all land, the simple thing that I want to say is, not all land in Howell Township is the same. And according to him, that's basically the way they valued it. It is all as it's equal. It's not equal. Another thing that they did, and I could say a lot more, and I'd really like to talk to you so that you understand where I'm coming from, if any one of you would take the time to talk to me so that I don't take anybody else's
Mrs.
time.
Smith, I'm going to just ask you, in deferences to the other folks, I think we clearly get your point. If you could just give us maybe a 30-second wrap-up.
I want to make one other strong point. It was my understanding that they would have comparables for everybody, and that was part of what they were supposed to do. Comparable sales.
I don't know.
That's the commitment that they made, and when I called, they said they'd have them. Well, what they compared us to when I asked for comparables, he found two that he considered comparable to ours. They both were really small ranches. Ours is a bungalow, not a ranch, even though they call it a ranch. And one had water and sewer, one did not. One was 6 rooms, and the other was 7 rooms. And they were both half the age of ours. That's not comparable. And they were on bigger lots. There are several things that I could tell you that this person did that I consider to be unethical, and they should be brought to task. Things that they shouldn't be saying to people, commitments and comments that are not their business to make.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Smith. We appreciate your comments.
Breakfast on Friday?
Okay.
I'll be over.
Okay.
I'll be over after the gym.
Okay.
All right. I may mispronounce the name, so please forgive me. Marie Liebehens? Liebehens. Miss Liebehens, welcome. Come on up. We apologize for the lateness of the hour. When you come up, make yourself comfortable, and please just give us your name and your home address for the record, please.
Okay. My name is Marie Liebehens, 193 Bennett Road in Howell Township. I'm not going to take too much of your time. I was born in this county. I lived in Fairhaven first 20 years of my life, and I've lived in Howell Township for 47 years. Okay. I have a small ranch house on Bennett Road, and I have 5 acres. Okay. They consider 3 of the 5 acres as wetlands. Okay. I got my assessment, was shocked. It's about 3 1/4 times what it was in the past. I went down and spoke to the gentleman about it. The problem wasn't with the house, what I'm being taxed for the land. And I kind of resent the fact that I live in an area in which when I moved in, it was predominantly farmland and small homes. And then large homes came to that particular area. And what seems to be taking place is I feel as though that I am being taxed because of the places surrounding me. And I spoke to him. He did give me he did, on my original one for the land, the wetlands was taxed for less than the other acres. But the amount I felt was astronomical. And I felt it was astronomical because we have no water. I mean, it's well water. I mean, we have no sewers. We have no gas. And I have a small little house to retire in on the land. I can't divide it. I can't sell it. I don't know why I'm stuck in the 6-acre bit when I only own 5 acres. I could have maybe divided it, given it to my children years ago or something, and I'm stuck there. Now, that's great for the people that are moving in, and they have the big houses, but I feel very trapped. I feel like a rat trapped in a cage right now. And I don't see any answers as how to get out of it, unless you can somehow change also the zoning in that particular area. I don't know why I'm stuck there. My piece of property is also what you consider flagged, I guess. It goes around the back, some others. And this is my big concern. And then I've spoken to others who had less land and small homes, and I saw that their land that was less, their assessment was more. So I was concerned about this because I feel this is going to really affect me. I mean, I still work. It looks as though I'm going to work till the day I die at this point. And, and I am concerned about this.
So are we.
What about the chances of changing the zoning also in that particular area? Give me a chance to at least sell it, divide it and sell it on that, because the taxes are so high. You know, this was, I have to say, New Jersey, when I was a kid, was absolutely beautiful. I grew up in Fairhaven. It was great. You knew everybody. There was years went by, no murders, no corrupt officials, no high taxes. It was wonderful. And when I moved out to Howell, hey, great, this is the farmland. This is a great place to live. And all of a sudden, things have really changed. You've got thousands of people leaving the state of New Jersey. The poor can't afford to leave. The rich will come because this is the place for them. You're losing your middle class. That's the backbone of your community.
Agree.
I think we all agree with you.
On that. Is that all you have to say?
I think to give you an answer to your question, I think at this juncture, from a timing perspective, even if there was a consideration of a zone change, and I'll address that in a minute, it isn't practical from a time perspective. It couldn't be done in the amount of time to effectuate this process. The other issue is, and our manager could comment on it in case I missed something, it would be inappropriate of any council to make a zone change in an effort to impact property value. Zone changes, so that they can stand on their merit when challenged, need to be based on sound zoning and planning, so that it makes sense how an area is zoned with respect to contiguous neighborhoods, areas, what have you. So changing the zoning would not be the right course of action in order to address your issue.
I can understand, but it would also would make sense if they didn't increase it 3.25 times the land, the value of the land at this particular point, which no one is going to pay that amount of money for. They've got to be rather desperate, I guess, to put out that money.
Ma'am, have you tried freezing your taxes in the past? Have you ever?
You want to go that way? Okay.
I'm
Here's
just
my
asking you.
Okay, I'll tell you what. I'm a widow, right? I'm also a cancer survivor, and I have a severely autistic son. My husband died of cancer quite a few years ago. I continue to work. If I didn't work, I wouldn't have enough money to live there. So I work. And when I work, I get punished for working because I can't freeze my taxes.
I just asked
So
you.
exactly, so that's what I said.
Yeah.
I feel like a rat trapped in a cage at this particular point, you know. And I said, I'm just shocked after all these years that they would increase and it's the land 3.25 times, and not everybody is being taxed the same way. It's being assessed the same way. So I mean, I can understand that you have to increase things, but I think there has to be fairness.
It's not us, ma'am. Do you know that? It's not us. We didn't ask for this revaluation. We don't like it. It's not bringing me joy. I don't get phone calls every day from people saying, "Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for doing this revaluation." That's not the phone calls
You're losing
I get.
a lot of people. A lot of good people are moving away from here. A lot of good people. Well, thank you.
We appreciate your
Thank you.
comments, and we share in your concern. Philip and Gertrude Halpin. Mr. and Mrs. Halpin, are you still here?
No, they left.
That's unfortunate. Okay, and Mr. John Costigan. Come on up, Mr. Costigan. You're the last speaker for public. Mr. Costigan, it says you'd like to talk about zoning and land use. So if you'd kindly introduce yourself and tell us what you have.
Thank you. John Costigan, 214 Birdsall Road. I'll give these out because it'll be more simple. I could have commented just on what everybody else said, and I'd be here all night.
John, they have copies. They have copies of what you emailed me. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, this is,
Okay.
I better give these to
Okay.
Let him give us a copy so he feels better.
There should be enough.
Just I didn't want you to think I don't.
Everybody professionals and everything.
Just didn't want you to think I don't. Follow up when you.
No, you're the man.
Thank you, Mr. Costigan. I've never seen these before.
There's a mailbox. Down.
Okay. Let me see what I have.
And you are, for the record.
I already said, but I'll say it again. John Costigan, 214 Birdsville
I
Road.
missed it.
That's okay. I slurred my words.
It's okay. Go ahead, Mr. Costigan.
Okay. On January 8th, I attended the zoning board meeting, as I do from most of the time, and there was an interpretation before the board. Generally, Mr. Van Noy, the chairman of the zoning board, allows 10 minutes to 15 minutes on an interpretation. If it takes longer than that, it's got to come back as a use variance. Well, it was an hour, but that was okay. One of the things that the planner consistently quoted was the Howell ordinance, and that's the two-pager here, on the definition of livestock, and it was trying to fit in dogs into it. Rather than, it's there in front of you. But on the top, I have the statute, the New Jersey State Statutes, NJSA 54:4-23.3. And that's talking about the agricultural use of the land. And it has a definition that's very, very similar to what we have on the Howell ordinance, except it's got specifically saying, except that livestock shall not include dogs. And that's a very important thing. That's what the state statute has. We have just about the same verbiage, but we neglected to put that in when the particular definition was formed in Howell, for whatever reason. So I'm asking the council to please consider adopting the statute language for that particular definition. And the reason for it is because on the interpretation was also a court stenographer there. And the basis that the attorney was using was the case law that Judge Perry did around 2002 or 2001 on the geese police situation. And that's basically what they're doing, and I'm sure they're setting it up to come back and ultimately perhaps litigate with the town. Now, in addition, I know there's a queue of other people looking to get into the ARE2 zones with the same situation. They're just waiting to see what happens with this one. Now, in addition to that, there's another judge in Monmouth County that may be getting a little judicial activism and looking to also make a place for dogs within the agricultural community. I think that I've heard from other attorneys that deal with agriculture that Judge Perry really erred. Yes. And I think that, I don't know where it's going to wind up, but I do know that the township should, in my opinion, adopt this thing, explaining what livestock are based on what the New Jersey state statutes say. The second page is just a little something, and it has to do with the sale, barter of products made from dog or cat fur, and it's prohibited. And a little bit farther down on the next, it's NJSA 4:22-25-3 and 25-4. They're talking about sale of flesh or products from dogs and cats. Dogs and cats are not livestock. And there's other statutes, and I have them, there's no sense in my boring everyone with them, but they talk about dogs chasing, worrying, biting, or destroying sheep. You know, a dog in its place is a dog in its place. Anyway, I'd like you please to consider that. And the reason I'm bringing it up tonight is I'd spoken to Mr. Chernetsky about it already anyway. And I know he's working on it, so I'm pleased with that. It's just something we should be doing, I think. Secondly, the other page that I gave you is, and Mr. Chernesky brought a little bit of this up with the R1 zone going to a full acre. And this graph, or this schedule, is from the Township ordinance as an appendix. And it goes over the different builders' acres, the 120,000 for a 3-acre zone, 80,000, et cetera. And I'm asking the township to please consider putting full acres on everything. I see no reason. To me, it's just adopting this particular modified schedule. And also, there's, I think, 16 places in the land use ordinance and the sewer ordinance that mention 40,000 square feet. So I'm hoping that you would consider looking into this as well. I just happened to break it down. On the top, I put my own handwriting. I put down what a real acre or acreage would be, given the different ARE zones and also the R zones. With the exception of the R3 zone, which really a full acre based on that would be 14,520 square feet. So I'd like to see we just keep the 15,000 on that one if it's legally acceptable. That's all I have on that. I do want to mention that when Mr. Walsh brought up that Marine that walked to Trenton, that was Michelle Gladden from the Asbury Park Press right back here, who was good enough to have done that.
We've invited him, by the way, I invited him to come to a meeting to get a presentation from the council.
That'd be great, yeah.
It's being worked on now.
The other thing, I want to thank Ms. Schlegel and Councilman Howell. I had a problem. I got a farm who's just about ready to be preserved. We're just waiting to close with the state on it. A 27-acre farm on Fort Plains Road. The owner called me Saturday. They had trouble with their electric, and there was a little smoky stuff, and they had to shut it down. And we didn't know if they were going to get water to the animals. So I called Mrs. Schlegel, and she was kind enough to to be on call if I needed her. And I called Mr. Howell because I know he deals in water, and he had agreed to give if necessary, donate or lend a generator and also a couple of 100 gallons of water for the horses until the electric could be restored. So I want to thank them both publicly. The only other thing is that Mrs. Dixell is an activist. She's a very passionate, spirited activist and a good lady. In fact, I thought when she was talking about citizens, I thought she was going to do a citizen's arrest, but I was thankful she didn't. But I do want to say something, and it's the second time I'm probably bringing it up at a council meeting. Mr. Magid has a lot of concerns, but in my opinion, somewhere along the line, we have to find a way to help Mr. Magid be a little less abusive to this council up here. He was demeaning. His questions are filled with contempt. And I mentioned to Mr. Magid before he left, I said, I'm going to speak towards your department up here. I don't know if you want to stay or not. I wanted to give him the opportunity to stay. I like Mr. Magid. He's passionate, but someone's got to do something, and I commend all of you, especially you, Mr. Mayor, because you seem to be directing it towards you. The venom, I'm sure it's just disappointment on his part, but something's got to be done there. This is a semi-judicial room that we have here. It's not quite a church, but we should all show the respect. That includes everybody in the room. And I just think that he went over the edge. And he's gone over the edge. He went over the edge in the middle school that time. I was fuming. I shouldn't have been. I was trying to get the bum out, which is not that's not my game. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that as well, and I'll get off because it's time to go home.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, thank you, sirs.
I'm going to close the public portion just for the benefit of the public and the council. we have a budget workshop this Saturday morning, February 10, in these chambers beginning at 9 a.m. We have a public participation meeting in these chambers on February 13th, Tuesday, at 7:30 p.m. Our next regular meeting to take action is Tuesday, February 20th. We'll have executive session at 6:30. Our regular session, according to this schedule, will begin at 8 p.m. We also have a budget meeting the next day, beginning at 6:30 p.m., Wednesday, 21/07, here in these chambers. I just want to clarify, Mr. Chernetsky, for February the 20th, it says here on my agenda that we're beginning at 8. Did we change that to 7:30?
Penny, do you know why that's?
There you go. It's 7:30, isn't it?
Well, it's 6:30 for executive.
Right. Okay, so that's, it noted here 8 o'clock, so it remains 6:30 and then 7:30 for regular. Is there any other business for the council to take? There is.
No, just comment on the budget hearing this Saturday.
Okay.
You've been provided with just the
Mr.
department.
Chernetsky, hold on one second. Folks, if I could just get your attention, please. I'm sorry. We're having a hard time hearing Mr. Chernetsky, please. Just give us one more minute. Go ahead, sir.
You've been provided with the worksheets that represent the departmental requests. The finance officer distributed them this evening. And for Saturday, we will be hearing from the Department of Public Works, the Senior Services Department, the Police Department. Mr. Costigan will be here to talk about projected expenses for ongoing open space preservation.
Mr. Costigan will be presenting on Saturday?
He will be with us, yet. And time permitting, we'll get into the manager's budget, finance department, and council budget.
Great. Okay, any other business? Motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, meeting adjourned.
Boy, Angela was quick.